Welcome, Autobots and Decepticons. I am Matthew Flynn, the Gladiator of Chaon, and I am joined with Troy Pacelli, otherwise known as Carton, the Klingon Cleric.
Hello, how is everyone today? Good morning. Well, good
Morning.
morning for me here in the US.
For me, it will be good afternoon.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, before we start talking about the episodes, let's instead start by talking about the show itself and our respective experience with this show. So I've watched this show multiple times. In fact, I was 10 years old when this show came out. So I technically grew up with the show and the character overall. But for you, this is your first time watching this show.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the show, or of this show, when you started watching it?
Well, to begin with, I went in with pretty much no, preconceived notions about it. I knew very little about it. And I'll be honest with you, as the first episode started, that catchy little opening tune that they play at the beginning of every episode, I was like, oh, is this going to be like a Teen Titans Go kind of thing? I was like, oh, I don't know, man. But no, it was a lot better than my gut instinct told me at the beginning. And I mean, I had a lot of it raised a lot of questions that I'll get to as we go through, but yeah, I did enjoy it. And I certainly saw, what it was. It was definitely geared for children. So it was definitely something that I would have probably, that I can imagine I would have seen very differently as a 10-year-old than as an adult. But as an adult, I found it rather intriguing, and it did seem to imply some story that, wasn't addressed directly. I suspect probably gets picked up a little bit later and whatnot. But yeah, it was good.
So any other things that you noticed, is that like the show overall, or is that more something we're going to go into in the individual episodes?
I'm sure we'll get into it in the individual episodes, but I mean, if I was to give a high level, overall impression of the basic storyline, it's a hero story. It's the classic, civilian, kind of a Spider-Man-ish kind of thing. He's picked on at school. He's a kid going through kid things, and dreaming of adventure, and a MacGuffin falls in his lap that gives him superpowers. In fact, it adds the element of, it gloms onto him, and he doesn't even have a choice any longer in, not doing anything with it. So he's, if it was written a little bit differently, it would be very much like, the Incredible Hulk. He's cursed with this, and he has no choice. It not only does it give him powers that, he could, if he was mature enough and made the decision to not use it, I guess he could, but unfortunately it also brings with it the baggage of, where it came from, and the attention it attracts, so he can't avoid that. So yeah.
Because when I'm watching it, there's one thing that like crops up to me that's maybe like someone like Professor Geek would be able to like identify it easier, but I kind of find it confusing to like properly assert whether Ben would fit into like an aspirational hero or motivational hero. He's definitely like a trickster type hero. That's definitely one of the parts of the archetype.
Yeah, I think if I was, I would probably see him more as a trickster, because he doesn't have I did compare him to Spider-Man, but he definitely doesn't have that sense of responsibility yet. He's definitely got his cousin and his uncle, or no, excuse me, grandfather,
Yeah,
constantly reminding him. I don't think they ever actually said the words, but the implication with great power comes great responsibility is definitely there. And he's like, at least at
yeah,
first. It takes him a while to get there. They even go through an episode where he, just has this feeling that he deserves something for what he's doing, which is
yeah,
directly played against the villain, who clearly is a villain specifically because of that motivation.
yeah. Because well, I suppose we'll just start with the episodes now,
Mm-hmm.
because this what I'm going to say does actually relate to the first episode and very early on. So and then there was 10.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I've one of my notes is it starts like Star Wars. That's one thing I immediately noticed, because you have two ships chasing each other and going past the camera, and like one's much larger than the one it's chasing. So it's like got a very Star Wars vibe there at the very beginning. And of course, you immediately start with the villain and his overall motivation. And I don't know if the name of the villain was ever mentioned throughout the episodes that you've watched.
If it
I,
was, I didn't catch it.
I don't think it was mentioned right at the very beginning, but the character's name is Vilgax,
Mm-hmm.
and he's very obviously just a pure evil villain. Although I don't really mind that as like an overarching villain of the season, because I tend to view Furial villains as being very bigger and larger than life and like very theatrical. So him being the overarching villain of the whole season kind of fits with that.
Yeah.
And I've also got like obviously the very first thing we see Ben do is right after we see Vilgax. Vilgax is very like serious and very determined. So we immediately cut to Ben, who is not quite as serious, like very, I don't want to say laid back, but he's obviously not the same personality as Vilgax. He's actually very opposite to Vilgax in terms of personality, which I think is a very good setup right at the beginning. And it's obviously he's displaying like very trickster like personality, because like making a paper aeroplane and then throwing it at his teacher's head,
Yeah.
and then pretending like he didn't do that when the teacher turned around.
Which is very 10-year-old boy, right?
Yeah,
In fact, in a later episode, he makes a comment to his cousin. You don't understand the rules of being a kid. You deny everything.
yeah. One thing that I've noticed is the most expansive notes that I have made are all in the first episode. So, okay, what else was there? And obviously, right after we see him as a trickster, or see him do, like display some kind of trickster type personality, the very next thing we see Ben do, after he's actually left school and started, or effectively started his summer vacation, is we see him help out a kid who's being bullied by like these two other kids, which is actually very real to life, because I know there are times when people will be bullied, and if they can stand up for themselves, they will.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that even though Ben like stands up to them, he still ends up getting his ass kicked with the
Pretty
kid,
realistic. Yeah.
because I know not always when kids like stand up to bullies doesn't always work out for them. It kind of goes with the whole idea of not everyone will just lie back and take when someone's bullying them.
Right.
And of course, we then get Ben is then, well, then the audience is introduced to his cousin Gwen, and their like kind of rivalry type relationship, which is
Yeah.
also very like Actually, it's more accurate to siblings rather
I
than
was
cousins.
thinking that too. I did tend to forget that they weren't siblings. In fact, when you first see her, you're as you're seeing the characters introduced, it takes a little while to find out who they are and what their relationship is. So like when he comes into the RV and he's like, "What's she doing here?" You know, it
Yeah,
I immediately thought sister. You know, and then it requires the explanation that comes up, your cousin, you know, da 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 da. Um, I also caught the fact that because their grandfather is uh, tends to be a little bit formal, at least in the first episode or two, referring to him as Benjamin and her as Gwendolyn. But then you realize, yeah, their nicknames are Ben and Gwen. They rhyme.
yeah. There's one small detail I noticed I don't fully understand is both Ben and Gwen have very like vibrant green eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and Grandpa Max doesn't have that. It's like I don't know if that was just a design decision or if there was any further reason behind that.
I
We
hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
and then we also get Grandpa Max with his like very strange food. And I like
Yeah.
the fact that this isn't necessarily like him trying to make himself seem more unusual or cover up anything, but rather it is just a part of his personality. He just likes very strange food.
And he is, at least the premise for it is, he is attempting to get his grandchildren to try new things, to experience, you know, get out of their comfort zone,
Yeah,
with these foods, this camping trip that they're going on, and so forth, which does two things as the story goes. First, it primes the kids for, you know, the crazy things that are going to happen to them with, you know, this alien MacGuffin and the adventure and whatnot. Also
yeah,
demonstrates that he's going to be open to dealing with, you know, some really bizarre circumstances in a way that you wouldn't expect most adults to be able to handle it.
yeah. And that does also go into some of the behind the well, not behind the scenes, but like some like unknown information about Grandpa Max that we don't know immediately. Although over the course of the season, we do get multiple hints that Grandpa Max might know more than he appear, or might know more than he's like letting on.
Uh-huh.
Because when Ben like storms off into the forest, and then the Omnitrix in its pod like crash lands down to, or it starts coming down, and when he spots it, it then suddenly turns and like flies right at him.
Yeah.
Which is there is a reason it does that, but that
Sort
won't
of
be
it
explained until later seasons.
sort of the whole, you know, Hal Jordan kind of thing. The MacGuffin, you know, chooses the
Yeah,
hero and boom. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was thinking was when I was watching. It's like very green, similar to Green Lantern's origin in a way.
And kind of alluding back to, you know, the connection between him and his cousin, um the fact their names rhyme and so on and so forth. I totally could imagine, you know, and I thought this as the series was going, I could totally see an alternate reality where Gwen was the one that found the thing and it became Gwen 10.
You're not far off with that. I don't want to spoil anything, but you're not far off with that kind of assumption.
I mean, I almost feel like, you know, as the story was going, there was without jumping too far ahead, there's a bit where they do encounter a heroic alien that kind of gives him some advice and whatnot, and I almost expected him to give her some sort of a doodah that would give her powers too, so that you know they could be partners or something like that. That didn't quite happen, but I was like, yeah, I could see that happening at some point.
Yeah, I mean, even though Gwen doesn't get any powers, we still see that both her and Grandpa Max can still be useful,
Oh,
even though they.
absolutely. I mean, there are times that she, actually saves Ben's bacon, without any powers.
One thing that I like is after Ben the Omnitrix then like attaches itself to his wrist, and like he's trying to get it off, but it's just not coming off.
Right.
And then he like first figures out that that it does actually do something, because the faceplate he's like messing with it, and then the faceplate extends out, and we see a small image of the different aliens that you can turn into.
Right.
And then he transforms into one of the aliens. Although this is more due to the fact that I've watched the show multiple times before, but the alien is called Heat Blast. He's like a fiery alien.
Right.
I don't know why, but in the first episode, they never directly name the aliens. It's not until later on that we actually hear the different aliens' names.
And those
or the
are
names
names
he's giving them.
I was just going to say, those are names that Ben gives them. He's not, it's not like they come pre-named or something like that.
No, yeah, that is Ben giving them those names, or the specific names. In fact, there are some inner workings of the Omnitrix itself. There are some details that aren't really filled in until later. Like the Omnitrix contains the DNA of, I think, like thousands of aliens all over the universe.
Huh.
So, obviously, we don't. Obviously, for the first season, we only get 10 aliens. And in later seasons, Ben doesn't unlock more aliens. And also gets new aliens that don't have DNA in the Omnitrix. But that's not until like a lot later. But for now, and there's also the like unusual like quirks of the way the Omnitrix works for this like first season. Like the multiple times that Ben chooses one alien and then turns into a different alien.
Yeah, I caught that.
Now, I think I have a possible reason why it does that. That is kind of relying on later information that comes up later.
Then let me speculate first, since I don't have any a priori knowledge.
Yeah.
My impression just from the episodes that I saw was, I mean, he says himself, it's like it's got a mind of its own. I'm guessing that there might be some sort of artificial intelligence in this, Omni thing.
Yeah, Omnitrix.
Omnitrix.
Well, one of the latest shows does have like an AI in the Omnitrix. In fact, I believe one of the latest shows mentions the Omnitrix having a very sophisticated AI. And I like the fact that when he first transforms into Heat Blast, because it's the first time it's happening, he like initially starts freaking out because he's on fire.
I'm on fire. I'm on fire.
and then as soon as he realizes that actually he's not like being hurt by it, he's basically immune to the fire.
Yeah.
Then he gets a little cocky, starts throwing fireballs, and accidentally starts a forest fire.
Right.
And I like the fact that when Gwen and Grandpa Max notice it, they're like, maybe it's just some fool messing with something he doesn't understand. Then they like immediately go Ben, and then run to the forest.
And yeah, that's very telling, because first, it's very perceptive. It is literally what is happening. And, it also points out, yep, they know Ben. So there you go.
Yeah. And then we get Gwen's the first one to run to Ben as Heat Blast. And obviously she doesn't recognize him. Although I like the fact that she recognizes him through the fact that he's talking the same way that he was earlier in the episode.
Not in the same voice, but the language he uses and his attitude towards her, she picks up on.
Yeah. I do find it funny that like he explains how the Omnitrix got on him, or where it came from, or the amount information that he has. And then when Grandpa Max comes up, he literally was about to repeat that whole thing again. And then Gwen's
Exactly.
like, "Hey, we have more important things to deal with right
in
now."
in in a very 10-year-old way, telling the whole narrative, all in one breath, you know, sometimes unnecessary details.
Yeah. And I do like the fact that Grandpa Max, without question, immediately comes up with like a solution to the problem, both
Right,
because like
because he
he's older.
probably came to the situation with some of these, he didn't know he was coming to find his grandson, you know, uh transmorphed into an alien, but he did know he was running into a forest fire. So he was already coming with the basic, what do we do, going on in his head. And then
Yeah,
yeah, he's like, well, we gotta do a backfire, you know.
yeah. And then after they solve that problem, they then don't really know how the Omnitrix works, so they're basically sitting around a campfire with Benner's heat blast, trying to like figure out what to do. And I do like the fact that Gwen's like first she says, "Are you going to stay a monster forever?" And Grandpa Max is immediately like, "He's not a monster, he's an alien." And they like look at him. He's like, "Oh, well, look at him. What else could he be?"
Yeah.
It's like very telling that he knows more than he's like making them think.
Well, and see, from I saw that too, but I also, from their point of view, took it as, well, uh he's got a very mature analysis of this thing. First off, this is still Ben. He is not a monster. That's
Yeah,
established. Um, it came from space. He's an alien, you know.
yeah,
But I'm guessing there also seems to be. I mean, I didn't know if I was projecting too much onto it. I didn't know how sophisticated this storyline, the writing and the backstory are. I didn't know if, like, you know there's an implication that he actually is an alien, his, even before he obtains this object, does Grandpa know that he is an alien and we just have no way of knowing that, like, kind of like a Peter Quill type of thing.
yeah. Well, I know that a lot of like details relating to Grandpa Max and like what he's done before and like what his prior job was and like a few other things do get revealed in the final episode, and then the first episode of season 2 does like delve a little more into it and give a little more of an explanation of what of
Gotcha.
all of that.
Yeah, and one other thing that I got from this, especially this first episode, that you might not have, just because I'm an old fart, but there was back in the 70s, a I during the live action superhero craze, there was Filmation did a live action Captain Marvel, and by Captain Marvel I mean it was called Shazam.
Okay, the original Captain Marvel.
Yes, exactly. And it was, how, they tend to change things a little bit when they move to TV and whatnot. It was Billy Batson as a child, basically the origin story, but and they never show the origin, they just do it in the opening credits every week, explaining how
Yeah,
he got his powers, but we never actually see the origin story. And you're coming en medias res. He's traveling around with his mentor. He's not even given a name. We have no idea what the connection is. If it's a grandfather, an uncle, some old man that took him in, who knows? He just refers to him as mentor. And they're traveling around
yeah,
in a Winnebago. Um, you know, having adventures with him as a kid turning into a superhero. And I saw that as identical to this, with the addition of, the female cousin, that, you know, adds a dimension to it.
Yeah. No, I didn't actually think of that. I've not actually watched that old show, that old Shazam slash Captain Marvel show.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily recommending it. I mean, it's the kind of thing that I have very fond memories of, but I have very fond memories of it because of watching it as a 10-year-old and having the Mego action figures and imagining that it was the same Captain Marvel and so forth.
Yeah,
But, you know, it was the kind of thing that when I'd go back and watch it as an adult, I'm like, yeah, this is pretty simplistic. It's not
yeah,
something that, my friends would get into now if they didn't when they were kids. So, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I am working on collecting some of the original Captain Marvel comics because he is one of my favorite DC heroes.
Well, in that case, I would recommend, at least for interest's sake, at least check it out. Even on YouTube, they've got at least clips and the opening and so forth, so you can kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
yeah. Then we also have the Vilgax sends down one of his drones to retrieve the Omnitrix, and it lands right near the near where the pod landed, and it investigates it, and then it blows up the pod. I'm assuming that would be to hide any evidence of the Omnitrix's existence to to the native population, I would imagine.
Right. And I mean, whether or not you have beneficial or nefarious intentions towards the planet, you don't want your alien technology getting into their hands. If you're benevolent, you don't want to affect, you kind of have that prime directive concept. You don't want to mess up their society with your technology. If
Yeah,
you're a villainous character, it's like, I don't want to run the risk of them, using this technology against me one day.
yeah. And I also like the drone. It then these two smaller disc shaped drones eject from its shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and then those start flying around and searching for where the Omnitrix is. And I don't know if the show does this at the beginning, but I know later on that Vilgax and all his drones can track the Omnitrix when it's in use, but if it's not being used, then they have no idea where it is.
Didn't catch that, but that does make sense because, again, this whole idea that uh you know these aliens and weird things keep, kind of finding Ben. In fact, his cousin even points that out. You just seem to attract all this kind of craziness since you found that thing.
Yeah,
And I also did, I don't know if I just missed something, but I was feeling under the impression that because the villain kept referring to it as, my Omnitrix, you know, I didn't know if this was just the conceit of somebody who was trying to obtain something and just, considering it his, because, that's his intent, or if it was really a device he had created and it, really was his. So that is not
yeah,
clear to me at this point.
yeah, yeah. We do learn somewhat by the end of the season, but we do have a more confirmational um, in, information at the later on that the Omnitrix is not a creation of Vilgax's. He just wants it.
Yeah. In fact, that's the next. I think the next thing that happens is he meets a heroic alien who, gives him a little bit more information, not a great deal. And
Yeah,
it still doesn't clear that up, but it does seem to imply that yeah, this is not something that should fall into his hands. It doesn't really belong to him. You need to hold on to it.
Yeah, and I also like the while like Ben and Gwen are just by the camp, and Grandpa Max has gone off to like investigate the crash site, and we get more hints of Grandpa Max's past, or to some extent. We like Ben is immediately like messing with the watch again, even though Grandpa Max told him not to. And he
Right.
like transforms into a big orange wolf dog thing,
Yep.
which is called Wild Mutt, and it doesn't have eyes like on the front of its head, but rather it has these like, I don't know if you'll call them like gills, like a shark, or just like these like slits on the side of his neck
Mm-hmm.
that allow him to see through like his sense of smell. And I also like the fact that Gwen's like, as soon as he transforms into that, she's like, "This game's no good. It can't see." And then she immediately attempts to like hit him from behind because she thinks he can't actually see her. And then like when she swings at him, he like jumps into the air and she falls on the floor.
Yep.
And then he just like runs off into the forest, and then obviously encounters the disc drones. And then like after he destroys one of them, and then another one is like about to like get him when he's transformed back. Then we see Gwen come in and then start smashing the droid with a shovel. And then and once again we see Gwen being useful without powers.
Right. Exactly. Like I said,
Yeah.
Kind of coming to his aid without powers. This also establishes a motif that I saw recurring in these first episodes of he's using his powers in either a selfish or frivolous way, but because there's an immediate actual need for those powers even while he's in that form, it almost justifies him. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, I know I initiated this change for selfish reasons, but then this guy showed up, so
Yeah. And then obviously after those drones are destroyed, uh, we do get like instances of Ben like actively trying to be a hero, or at least like wanting to be like that. Although we do later learn that Ben has actually like been inspired by like superhero TV shows when he
Sure.
was like younger.
Sure.
So it's not completely out of nowhere, but we won't learn that until later.
And I do love the recurring motif of him, when he's caught a bad guy or whatever, and he's dealing with, the aftermath. No need to thank me. It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's a very 10-year-old pretending to be a superhero kind of
yeah.
attitude. Yeah.
And I also like that when Gwen, and Grandpa Max are all like sitting in the RV after those drones attacked him. Grandpa Max does actually like, he's like stern with me. He's like, "I told you not to mess with this thing. We don't know what it is."
Mm-hmm.
He's like being stern with him, but then he also like, once that moment's passed, then he like starts encouraging Ben to actually like be better and be more heroic. 'Cause he's like we need to teach you how to use this. And like I like that Ben's like he's like looking down when Grandpa Max is being
Mm-hmm.
like stern with him, but then when Grandpa Max like starts encouraging him, and then
Yeah.
he like jumps to his feet, and he's got like a happy look on his face and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Because it's not just, no, you can't leave it alone. It's, no, you can't, but
Yeah,
there is a way of redirecting, his natural inclinations. I'm a big believer that that's really how you deal with not just children, just people in general, because it's just human nature and you cannot fight it. You tell someone, no, you can't do it. That's not going to work. You know, you got to
Yeah,
find a positive outlet for whatever the inclination is. This is why I hate what schools try to do. Boys need to learn to just sit and listen, and you got to break that. They're now calling it toxic masculinity.
yeah,
No, you channel that. You give them recess and gym class, and then you break up the long stretches where they get bored. you know
yeah,
there's a positive way to deal with that. So that's very much what I'm seeing here. And again, it's the wisdom of the grandfather, right?
yeah. And also the more you tell someone they can't do something, the more they then want to do
Want
that
to.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then obviously we then have, now that the small disc drones have been destroyed, now the bigger drone that sent them starts attacking like a park or like some kind of like car park with all other trucks and cars and like all other people there. And then Ben well, for the first instance of convenient radio telling the protagonist what's happening. That happens multiple times. But they then decide to then go and help. And Ben turns into the third alien, which is Diamond Head, which I will point out is kind of misleading because he's not actually made of diamond. He's made of an alien material. Although we don't learn the name of that material until a lot later. So I suppose we don't have to worry about that right now. And I do like the fight scene between Diamond Head and the larger robot. And we do get some like we don't just have Ben fight it and then win. He does actually like get thrown around a few times. What did you think of the overall like the final fight in the episode?
I liked the fact that, it's not just here, but I do see it progressing as we go through the season. This idea of him being completely lost on what his abilities are, sometimes misusing the power, because what he imagines he is able to do and what he is actually able to do may not always line up. But there is definitely this idea that between the abilities of the Omnitrix and just his spirit, and willingness, tends to work out. So
Yeah,
it's like it's a good fit.
yeah, and also we learned that Ben's not as dumb, I suppose would say. He's not like a genius, but he's by no means an idiot. He does
Right.
actually know what he's doing.
He's clever and he can learn.
Yeah, yeah, because we get that moment where the drone or the droid blasts him, and like it like reflects off of him
Mm-hmm.
because of his because of the material that Diamond is made of. It's very reflective, and he takes note of that. And then he taunts the robot to like actually fire a beam like at him intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
and he uses his hands to
Yeah,
redirect that beam back at the robot.
yeah, I did catch that. Yeah.
And then after he's defeated the robot, and then quickly runs away before he turns back, we then get the final part of the episode where it cuts to I assume the next morning, where he has transformed into another one of the aliens called Accelerate, who has super speed, and he's ran home, collect some things, and then run back again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he speeds around the RV and puts everything back in, and then transforms back, and then obviously the episode ends there with a little bit of mystery of what's to come, and also obviously the summer vacation is not turning out the way that he initially expected it to. I also really like the transformation sequences when he like turns into an alien. Although sometimes it doesn't actually show the transformation, sometimes it just shows a flash and then he's that particular alien.
Right, because when it does show the transformation, sometimes I get the impression that it's it looks painful, I gotta say.
Yeah. Or it'd be like something like heat blast with like you see like what look like molten bits of rock like going over his arm and then up his arm to his face.
Yeah. Or like the bulging vein,
Oh yeah, for like
effect. It's like,
wild
ooh,
mark.
yeah.
Probably the least painful with Diamond Head's transformation because it's just like a diamond or that kind of
Which
material
seems
kind of
to just
growing
cover his
over.
body. Although,
Yeah.
if you really think about it enough, it's got to be more than that. It's not just covering his body; it's literally transforming his body.
Yeah. I suppose along the lines of like say a werewolf transformation, because I know that tends to be depicted in well, I mean most werewolf movies are horror movies, so obviously it's going to be like depicted in a negative way.
Sure.
Also
And
something like that, like cracking bones and then extending and then fur growing out and claws projecting out of your fingers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you definitely, in fact, at one point I thought he was turning into a werewolf, but that's when he turns into the dog alien.
Oh yeah, because you have the orange fur growing
and the teeth, and
oh yeah, and the claws in this very like squarish or rectangulish looking claws.
Mm-hmm.
No. Although a later season does have aliens that definitely pay respects to the Universal monster movies.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, the Wolfman. I think,
Interesting.
yeah, I think it's just those three. But that obviously that's a later season, so we don't really need to go into too much detail on that. The next episode, Washington, BC.
Now, this one kind of threw me for a loop. I kind of thought I was, missing something here because we encounter a villain that I immediately assumed had something to do with the aliens and all of that. And I, by the end of the episode, never quite got anything that directly ties him to, aliens and the, the greater storyline.
Yeah, because there's only like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's only like 4 episodes that tie into like the overall story of the season. That being the first episode, the episode Hunted, the Alliance, and also the final episode Secrets.
But what we do see is as they're traveling around, they do encounter people that do miraculous things that have their own kind of superpowers. And within the span of those episodes, you don't get origin stories where they got their abilities from or anything. One might presume that they also obtained some sort of alien tech or were influenced by some sort of alien tech that we just don't see in the span of the story. But who knows? I mean, I almost get like a Smallville kind of thing going here, where Superman keeps encountering superpowered beings, and they're superpowered because they came in contact with meteor rocks, and then when the one guy's like, well, no, I never did come in contact with those meteor rocks. He's surprised that there's some other way someone could get abilities, you know?
Yeah. And we get the I suppose this is the second villain, yeah, with Dr. Animo,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm curious if you recognized his voice.
It sounded familiar, but I wasn't quite getting it.
The actor voicing Dr. Animo is Dwight Schultz from The Next Generation.
Yes. Yes.
He actually Dr. Animo is not the only voice he does for this show. He does he does a one-off character in the episode Tourist Trap. But in this episode,
Was he the mayor?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I kind of got that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Dwight Schultz has actually voiced Dr. Animo in basically every appearance that Animo has appeared in this franchise.
Oh, so he's a returning character.
Yes. Dr. Animo appears in one episode of every season, and he also appears in a few times in the sequel, all three of the sequel shows, and also he appears in the reboot as well.
Right. And again, this was a character where I do not immediately see any connection to the aliens. I have to wonder if that ends up getting touched on at a later point. But also, this was what I was referring to when I was saying he encounters this villain whose motivation is he feels he deserves something because of his abilities and what he's done. He wants compensation. What's rightfully mine, he keeps saying. And you get that same, you see those kernels in Ben and his grandfather pointing out, no, just because you do something good doesn't mean you deserve something in return for it. That's not what being a hero is. And the implication is that's what being a villain is.
Yeah. And we get Dr. Animo is like when we first meet him, he's obviously he's got like a load of animals in his apartment. His skin's like turned a greenish kind of color, and you can see his nails have grown like really long.
Mm-hmm.
So and obviously he's got long hair, so he's obviously like ignored basically anything to do with other than his research and his work.
Well, he's become bestial, right? He is not conforming to societal norms, very much behaving in a naturalistic, animalistic kind of way. But there's also, because he talks about, doing genetic modification and stuff like that, you wonder if he hasn't done some genetic modification on himself.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also have the landlord like coming, because I think the landlord says his rent is like 6 months overdue, I think he says.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we get a sense of how long he's been like this, possibly even longer. I don't think we get like an actual time frame on when, or the only time frame we get is how long he's been in the apartment with the animals and doing his experiments.
One thing I did kind of note was you would expect the landlord to get more, bothered by the animals in the apartment than well, I mean, obviously his focus was the rent, but it also you'd expect him to say something about that, and that didn't become a focus.
Yeah. I also like the line when Dr. Animo says, is like, go away, you're disturbing me. And then Lano just says, earlier you were disturbed long before I got here.
Yeah, exactly.
And we also get him actually showing off what it is that he is actually, like what he's accomplished or what he feels he deserves, or I suppose a reward for, which is mutating animals. And I think evolving them, I believe he refers to it as. Because he like takes out a frog and puts it on the floor, and then he's got like what looks like a some kind of like not a tray, like a colander, I think, or that's kind of what it looks like on his head
Yeah.
with the antenna, and then he's got the device on his chest, and he shoots a laser at the frog and transforms it into some giant mutant frog,
Mm-hmm.
and then it like swallows the landlord, which is
The play
surprisingly
on
tame.
play
Oh
the
yeah,
whole play on the frog in your throat kind of thing,
yeah,
or the
which
other way
on
around.
yeah, and which anime makes a joke about. And then the frog just kind of spits the guy out into the and it like hits the wall. I'm actually kind of surprised that that whole part doesn't really get brought up again,
Mm-hmm.
or any kind of notice of that whatsoever. We're just left to assume the landlord is presumably unconscious on the floor there,
Yeah.
and I would assume there's probably a giant hole from where the frog would have exited the building. Because we do see later on the frog does just straight up crash through walls. And then when he goes to the supermarket for like some components for his device, I believe he calls it a transmodulator, I think is what he
Mm-hmm.
says. Yeah, when he's like another instance of convenient news or convenient information being shown on like a TV or radio or something. Because actually, now I think about it, the TV that was next to him, I don't think he turned it on. I think it just kind of conveniently came on at that particular moment and like advertised exactly what he needed.
Yeah.
I feel like that probably was just like the writers or the animators being like, oh, we need a way for him to
Yeah.
like get to this specific point where the main character
Yeah.
is.
Plot contrivance. Exactly.
Yeah. And also before Anna actually gets to the store, we see Ben immediately actually before the whole anime part at the very beginning when Ben's heat blasting, he's like stopping some robbers and he's like saving some people from a burning building. We actually see Ben use his powers in a more unique way. Like he's actually using heat blast to actually absorb the fire of the burning building.
Yeah.
And then he like creates some kind of like fire tornado to transport them out of the building and then onto the floor below.
Which demonstrates that he's gained some expertise with his abilities. Also, at this point, I was my first instinct was, you're in the middle of a fire. Why do you choose the fire guy? But then there's also, it's not like we've seen him as there's no alien that spews water or anything, so that's not going to help us.
Yeah. Yeah, so then he also we see the when he uses his fire to like create a hole in the wall, for some reason it looks like lightning and it also sounds like lightning as well. I don't quite understand that. I think that might just be a design decision rather
Well,
than
it could be, if you really want to dig into it, what is lightning but a plasma created by electricity. So I mean, the implication is he's got some sort of a plasma blast, and certainly it could look like electricity. Yeah, it could look like lightning. So
yeah. And we also get, once he saved them, we also get I suppose the focus of what Ben feels like he deserves, which is a gold Sumo Slammer card.
mm-hmm.
And the kid's got one, and he's like, "Ooh, where'd you get it?"
Yeah.
And then he's like, before he has a chance to actually find out where or how, Grandpa Max and Gwen like drive up, and he's like, "Hey, the fire was a diversion. The robbers are getting away." And then we also get Ben, like more reinforcement of Ben feeling like he deserves something for being a hero, because when he like stops the robbers and gets them to put their hands against the wall, and then he turns back while they're not looking, so then they don't
Right.
realize that he's the one who was the fire guy. He's like, they're like, "Hey, it's just some kid," and then the
Yeah,
police show up, and he's like, "Move aside, son. It's not playtime." And he's
right.
like, "Hey, I stopped them."
Yeah. And you can certainly understand why they'd be dubious, what exactly did you do that stop the bad guys? But also this uh reiterates a an element, of the rules of the artifact, that once he changes, he doesn't have the conscious ability to change back. There's a timer on it, and he can't avoid changing back at the end of that span of time, but he also can't change back
Yeah,
before that. He's, you know, committed to a span of time.
yeah. I'm not sure if the first season establishes this, but it is a 10-minute timer for each alien. Although
Yeah,
the show does kind of,
I don't think they said an exact amount of time,
yeah,
but you also get not only that, but it seems like after you've gone through a sequence, you can't immediately then change into another one. There's a recharge time or something like that.
yeah. And the Omnitrix, even the color of the Omnitrix even changes to signify that, like, it's green when you can use it, and then it's red when it's
Yeah.
recharging.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, and then we go back to cut back forwards to where we were talking about the with Ben at the mall, and when Ben goes like into
Oh,
the
wait a minute. Before
oh,
you go on, I did want to say one other thing about that time thing.
yeah,
So he's um when they're traveling between the house fire and going to stop the guys, he's sitting in the passenger seat and he's burning up the seat.
yeah,
Again, a reflection of the fact that it's not like he could just turn it off and then turn it back on when he gets there. um but that did seem to imply a much longer span of time. um because how long was he in the house rescuing them before he gets into the Winnebago? How long is he driving in the Winnebago? How long does he
yeah,
spend stopping these guys before he then changes into his normal mode? So anyway, yeah, I
yeah,
just wanted to mention that too.
yeah. And like Ben goes into like the into one of the aisles that's just completely packed with sumo slammer cereals, and I think all of them either have a card in them or potentially have one of the cards in them, and Ben just like transforms into Grey Matter and just starts going through all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gwen walks down that aisle. I believe it's because she like heard the Omnitrix going
Mm-hmm.
off. And I think there's also like something about the Flash as well. I think there's like I'd imagine someone would have seen the Omnitrix like flash green when he transforms. 'Cause I know with something like cameras, when they have a flash, there are instances where like you'll see the flash even though you're not facing it.
Right.
So I think maybe the Omnitrix does the same thing where other people can like see the flash even if they're not directly facing Ben. Because every time you see like the flash, you do see someone nearby, like either Gwen or a different character. You see them kind of take notice of that.
And was this the first time that we're seeing Gray Man?
Oh, Grey Matter.
Gray
The
Matter, yeah.
yes, the little yeah. This is the first time we've seen
So
Grey Matter.
this establishes, a new character a new instance of abilities. This idea of something that's not powerful but useful for, you know it's kind of a representation of him being a little bit clever and problem solving.
Yeah, because Grey Matter's abilities, he's like he's small, he can crawl on walls, and he's like very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
I also like that each of the different alien transformations, they're not just copy and pastes of each other. They are like very different in like appearance and their abilities,
Yeah.
and also the way they sound as well.
Yeah, and they seem to have an maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like they change his personality slightly. You know, he becomes a little bit more bestial when he's in the dog form. You know,
Yeah.
he's a little bit more noble when he's in the crystalline form. You know,
Yeah.
he's a little bit more I don't adventurous when he's in his fireman, you know, the fire producing form and so forth.
Yeah. There is definitely a little bit of truth to that, because one or two of like the aliens do have like a minor psychological change,
Mm-hmm.
specifically with Ghost Freak, the the grey
Mm-hmm.
ghost or alien. Although the implication of Ghost Freak having like a subtle psychological change that actually goes more in depth in the second season. We do get a few hints of that later in this season. We'll get to that when we get,
Sure.
I believe it's it's Last Laugh where we really get an idea of, we get more of an idea of Ghost Freak being kind of somewhat psychologically different from the others. Yeah, so we have because Ben has turned into grey matter to try and find the gold Sumo Slammer card, and then he gets caught and he turns back. That then has the Omnitrix in recharge mode, so when Dr. Animo attacks, he can't turn into an alien, so he has to save the day as himself, which he does then do. I also like the fact that Dr. Animo uses his like ray beam helmet thing to mutate a few more animals in the area,
Right.
like a hamster and then one of the birds. And obviously, Ben like stops the hamster as himself. Although Animo then does collect what he needs, and then he like gets away on the bird, and also the frog then jumps through the same hole in the like a window above. It's like a window above the store. The bird crashes through, and then the frog jumps through as well.
Mm-hmm.
I do also like the fact that we do see more of some of the other aliens, like when Ben is chasing the bird, he like turns into forearms and like tries jumping after and grabbing onto the bird.
Yeah.
I don't think I missed it. Oh yeah, there is a part where the I forgot what point it is, but the mutated bird like flies in and grabs Gwen and like just flies off with her.
Mm-hmm. And
And
she makes some kind of quip about, you know, they said, you know, this was going to be an adventure, you know, or something like this.
yeah.
This trip was going to be an adventure or something like that.
Although one thing that I kept thinking is that bag has some very strong handles, because the bird's like holding onto the bag itself,
Right.
and then the straps are around her arms. Like, how is the bag's like straps not snapping or anything?
Cartoon logic. It's what we need for
Yeah.
the story right now.
Yeah. And we do get a little later on when Dr. Animo's in the museum. Well, I'm going to assume he like was intending to go there from the beginning after getting the rest of the stuff that he needs. And he like then improves his transmogulator to then bring the mammoth to life, which I'm not sure if that even was like a real mammoth or if that was just like a plastic prop or something.
Well, this was where I got a little bit. I knew I was reading way too much into it, but it kind of bothered me that his abilities seem to be predicated on genetics. And if the idea was that these are skeletons that he is, manipulating the genes of, they would actually have
Yeah.
to have some genetic material in them. And, scientifically, we've pretty much established there's a limit to how long DNA can actually last on or in
Yeah.
bone. So yeah, but whatever.
Yeah.
Again, as you point out, you have to suspend your disbelief with whether or not that bag is going to hold Gwen. So yeah, same kind of thing. It's not terribly realistic, but let's just go with
Yeah.
it.
And yeah, we have like Ben turns into forearms and starts fighting the mammoth while where Gwen and Grandpa Max follow Animo to try and stop him. And he like resurrects like a T-Rex or a T-Rex skeleton, which I noticed there were a few like patches on the T-Rex where his skin hadn't fully come back, where you can still see its bones.
Which, boy, I'll tell you, scientists would really get hyped if that was ever possible. But yeah,
Yeah.
T-Rex is way too old for anything to still be on the. In fact, the bones could not even last that long. The only reason we have bones of dinosaurs is because they have fossilized. That's not actually bone. That's actually minerals that seeped into the bone, and as the bones deteriorated, it left these minerals.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, I know that once bone is dead, it does kind of turn very stone-like after like a while of being dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's there's no option for there to be any kind of skin. Or there has been we have seen what the texture of dinosaur skin was, because it's left its imprint on adjacent mineral sediments have maintained the outline, the impression of that skin. But yeah, it would not be possible. But again, whatever. It's the story they wanted to tell. So
Yeah, and I imagine a lot of sci-fi does kind of
exactly.
hinge on suspension of disbelief, and the show has already used a few different like sci-fi scenarios, like an object falling from the sky and
Right.
that sort of thing. Oh yeah, and we have when Ben is like when they're trying to get to Gwen to like save her from the giant bird, the mutant bird. Ben turns into another alien called Stinkfly, who, funnily enough, is also appropriately named. Because I know when Ben's like when he's like carrying Gwen, she's
Yeah.
like she like notices that the like he actually smells really bad.
Yeah. And in a later episode, someone says, "Man, you reek," and he's like, "I know."
Yeah, and we also have like Ben like flying around and fighting the mutant bird, and then he takes it out, and then obviously we have Dr. Animo who's like gone straight to the I don't know where it's some kind of like like office building or like or scientific building or something. I'm not sure where. They don't really say anything about it. We just have the one of the other scientists who won the award that Animo feels like he deserves. He's like going there, and like as soon as he gets there, he like takes the award and like then starts acting as though he actually won it. He's like I'd like to thank the committee for this award, and then he immediately gets his T-Rex to then pick up the other scientist and like eat him. Obviously, then comes in, and then we get a moment where he has to like choose between the Godzilla Slammer card or being a hero and saving the other guy who's about to be eaten by a T-Rex. Although the way it's framed, I feel like there probably would have been enough time for Ben to then grab the Sumo Slammer card and save the other
Yeah.
guy. but I get the overall message they were trying to send with the episode. Do you have any more thoughts on like the last few parts of the episode?
No, I do like, you know, and I don't know if this is going to be if they're going to return to this motif or if this just establishes it once for all, but it does do the whole, you know, responsibility of power over, you know, any kind of personal gain kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, now we're on to episode 3 of the Kraken, and one of the
a lot of references to Moby Dick in this one.
Yeah, I also noticed kind of a mix of obviously Moby Dick, but I also noticed what could potentially be some Jaws references as well.
Definitely, yep.
Because the character of Captain Shaw does remind me very strongly of Quint from Jaws,
Which
and a little bit of Ahab as well.
I was just going to say, and I definitely think Ahab had an influence on Quint. So yeah, exactly. Also, there's a reference to someone by the name of Melville, I believe.
Not...
There was a reference to some marine biologist or something like that named Melville or something like that. So I don't know. Yeah, there was a couple different references.
Yeah, we have like the very first thing we see is Ben and Gwen outside by the lake at night, and Ben's the only one who actually jumps into the lake. And the first thing he does is transform into forearms so that he can like scare Gwen, and he's like he pretends that he's like being pulled under the water, and then he transforms into forearms and comes out covered in swamp and vines and stuff, and like just terrifies her.
I will note that when he does that, I swear it was very much like Swamp Thing from DC Comics. I was like, is this like a crossover or something?
Yeah. I did kind of like see that in a Swamp Thing. I think some of the vines even were like over forearms in a very, very Swamp Thing like way.
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously, as Gwen's like walking away, because like she realizes that it's not actually a real swamp monster. And he's just like, there's like a monster in the lake. How dumb can you be? And then the actual monster comes out of the lake and pulls him under.
And again, an example of what I was talking about before, where he's using his powers in a frivolous way, only for something to actually occur, where it, you know, kind of merits him having his powers.
Yeah. And we don't get a proper look at the Kraken itself in this early part of the episode. It's not until later on that we actually get a better look at the monster. I also have made note that the Kraken itself does kind of remind me of the Loch Ness Monster, or at least like sightings of the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, that's very, very clear when you start to get the lore, you know, and the captain is talking about, you know, searching for this creature, and he shows the picture, and that picture is very clearly a reference to the famous Loch Ness you know, photograph.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's identical to an already existing photo of the Loch Ness Monster.
Right.
Or a sighting of the monster. Yeah, we also get in this episode the first instance of Ben mistransforming. So I believe when Ben and Grandpa Max are on Captain Shaw's boat, and then the Kraken kind of starts swimming past, and Grandpa Max encourages him to transform so he can save the people on the harbor. He like specifically, we don't actually see him choose a name, but we see him jump in the water, transform into Accelerate, and then when he comes up, he's like, "Hey, I wanted Rip Jaws, not Accelerate." He's like, "Stupid watch," and then he like runs along the water and starts getting the people out of the way. I think what is it?
And I thought about it again because I speculated. So is the watch, making a decision for him? Is there a reason for it? And honestly, I couldn't identify something that was a clear reason why that form was better at that moment than, actually any other.
Yeah, because later in the episode, we do see that Ben does transform into Ripjaws, who is like a fish merman type
Right.
alien. Although the whole him mistransforming does actually kind of lend itself to like more unique storytelling because it does then force Ben to think more creatively with
Right.
the
Yeah.
alien that he's been turned into rather than say him turning into the exact alien he wants every time.
And any gamer kind of knows that situation, right? Where you
Yeah,
you go into a situation, you have a certain set of objects, and you're in the middle of combat, and you can't change them. So, okay, this isn't what I planned, but I guess I got to go with it.
yeah. And we also get the maybe this is like a political thing. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But we get the this like animal activist group called Friends of Fish, who we learn later on are actually a bunch of criminals pretending to be some kind of animal activist group in order to cover their tracks.
Yeah, I thought that too, but then because of that kind of switcheroo on it, I kind of figured I find it difficult to believe it's an intentional thing. I think it was just a plot point. They're drawing from real world, you know, types of organizations to use as a front, you know. I think that's all it was.
Yeah, I also like the when Ben's accelerating, he's like the Friends of Fish guys on their boat, and they're like he helps them out when the Kraken like directly attacks their boat and tries taking one of the crates. And I do like the fact that he like Ben like he like slides underneath the monster and he's like kicks the monster so quickly that he like kind of has like a bullet effect when he's like rapid kicking the Kraken's jaw.
Yeah.
Like gets it to and then that like gets it to go away. I also like the fact that the head guy on the boat's like he's like somewhat succeeds at like covering up what actually is in the crate because he like because when Ben asked them why he would risk his life for like a couple of sandwiches, he was like or Ben's like first he's like asking what's in the crate, and then he's like our lunch, and then he's like you'd risk your life for a couple of sandwiches, and then before they have any time to like really think about it, the Kraken's like tentacle arm thing like comes out of the water and grabs the crate and pulls it into the water. Yeah, yeah, and then we have and then obviously the Friends of Fish guys like lock off the lake and don't let anyone on, which I suppose to some extent is kind of a smart idea because we did just see a giant river monster just come out of the water and start attacking people.
Right.
Obviously, we don't learn until later the monster isn't isn't actively um, doesn't actively attack people. Rather, it's just like being defensive of its like children.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have Captain Shaw like goes off in his boat, and Ben sneaks into the boat. Because obviously throughout the episode, he was the only one who actually saw the monster before it emerged, and he kind of, I don't know, to some extent, kind of empathized with Captain Shaw because he also knows about the Kraken, and also Max, or Grandpa Max, does give him a little bit of wisdom, like saying just because he's like saying the same things, he doesn't mean he exactly is someone to be trusted. And I think he used the analogy that he doesn't have both oars in the water, I think is what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have, and when Shaw is like on the lake at night, and Ben's hiding there, and he like firstly like thinks it's like a stow, or I suppose Ben is a stowaway, but he like after he realizes who it is, he then like just lets him help. And he first tells him to stay on the boat so he can go under the water and check out. I'm assuming the nest would be around where they were. Although I do find it funny that when Shaw is under the water and he's like got a harpoon with him, and he like sees like something move behind him, and he like quickly turns around and fires his harpoon, and then it's like revealed that it's Ben that's swimming behind him. And he's like, he very nearly shot a kid with a harpoon.
Yeah.
It's like it's very lucky that Ben knows how to like very quickly dodge while underwater. Yeah, we have and then this is the point when we have the reveal that the Friends of Fish guys are actually criminals, because they're one of their, I don't think it's the same boat, I think it's a different boat, stops right next to Shaw's boat. Although they're all wearing masks, so you don't know it's them. But the head guy he's like his very recognizable voice, so you kind of have an idea that it's the same guy.
Yeah.
And then obviously they well, there's one thing I noticed after they knock Shaw out and then put him on their boat. I did notice that he was in between those shots. He went from being in a wetsuit to then not being in a wetsuit when he's on their boat. I'm just thinking, okay, did they take him out of the wetsuit at some point?
Yeah, presumably some sort of a continuity error.
Yeah. I mean, there definitely has been a few errors in the, not the animation, but like the art style itself. Because we had a few shots where certain parts of characters' designs won't be colored in right. Like Forearms wears black gloves, and then in some shots those gloves won't be there. And also there's like obviously we had the black line down the front of Ben's shirt, and then on the back there is no black line, it's just completely white. But in some shots it has been colored in black. So there is a few errors here and there. And we also get that as Ben's saving Captain Shaw from the I don't know what they actually like. Obviously, the Friends of Fishes are from, but I don't know what the actual group name is. I don't think they ever like say anything about that. But while Ben's saving, he turns into Stinkfly again, and we do get like a moment where they reference Superman. Because like as he's flying up, one of them's like, "Hey, is that a bird?" He's like, "No, it looks like a plane." And then they're like, one of them like breaks out by saying, "It's a bug," and then they start firing at him. I do like that's a little reference, like a little reference in there. And we also get another nice detail of when Stinkfly lands in the water, his wings are then too wet for him to properly fly, which is another nice added variety to the overall scene. Ow. there any interesting things that you noticed
Um,
throughout the episode?
so just the overall, again, you know, we're talking about a almost a kaiju type of monster here,
Yeah,
with no origin. We have no idea where it came from. Is it in any way related to the alien weirdness that's going on around Ben, or is this something completely different? I almost feel
yeah,
like there, you know, there could almost be a Lovecraftian sort of thing going on here too. You know,
yeah. Although now I think about it, the alien transformation Ripjaws could probably be like either like some kind of like either interpreted as being like some kind of, let's say, like a child of Dagon, or maybe more referencing the creature from the Black Lagoon, or something like that.
sure, exactly.
Although I did notice that when Ripjaws is underwater, his legs kind of merge into one, into like a mermaid, like a
Yep.
merman tail. And we also get that while the I believe the main villain, I think his name's Jonah, I think, or Jonah something. Oh yeah, that's it. Jonah Melville. That's the guy's
Jonah
name.
Melville, that's what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like him and his in his group of guys. They're like they're moving the eggs into like this container, and that's when the Kraken attacks them. And then also Ben turns into Ripjaws and starts fighting Jonah. And we do get a few deals where the Kraken itself bites into this like robotic suit that Jonah is in,
Mm-hmm.
and like bites into that and then breaks it open. And then as he's like floating there in the water, he attempts to stab the Kraken with a knife, and it just snaps in half immediately. I do like the fact that Ben does actually the heroic thing and actually stops the Kraken from eating him,
Yeah.
and then like punches him in the face and knocks him out, and then just pulls him out of the water and just sort of hangs him on a bit of wood that's sticking out. And then we see in the background some like police boats coming over. Okay, anything else you would like to add to the end of that episode?
Nope.
Let's start with the next episode, permanent retirement.
Now here I had a note. Okay, so obviously we're the focus is on old people, right? And
Yeah,
in the very first scene, you have Ben and Gwen going into an ice cream parlor, right?
yeah,
And Gwen, you know, makes this goofy comment about what do you have that is, you know, fat free and, you know, less than however many grams of sugar. And the guy behind the counter is like, napkins, what do you want? You know,
yeah,
and the again, this is, you know, an animation style and whatnot, but I swear in that brief instance, that character, I swear he looked to me like Cotton, the grandfather from King of the Hill. I mean, his
yeah.
personality, his look, everything about him. I'm like, okay, is this a crossover or at least a tip of the hat? I wasn't sure, but you know, that definitely stood out to me right there.
Now, one of the things that well, the first thing I noted for this is in this little, I suppose, pre-episode section, we do actually see another one of Ben's aliens, which that being Upgrade, who's like this. suppose you could describe Upgrade as like very similar to the T-1000 from Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Although Upgrade, instead of mimicking other stuff, he instead merges with other technology and improves it.
Right.
Hence the name Upgrade.
Right.
Yeah, we have. I've also added that this episode gives me kind of a Invasion of the Body Snatchers type vibe to it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole, putting them in pods kind of thing and whatnot, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and then being replaced by alien copies. Although these aliens have a very different motivation than Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Right.
Because, and we also have the characters then meet their aunt Vera, I believe is her name.
Right.
Yeah, Vera. I'm not 100% sure on what her relation to like everyone else is. I'm
Well, okay.
assuming.
So I would have to assume, I was trying to think this through. So since their grandfather, they share a grandfather, that must mean that either their mother, well, wait a minute, he has the same last name as them. So both of their fathers must be brothers. Okay.
Yeah, that is the case.
And for this to be their Aunt Vera, and since she by age seems to be contemporary with their grandfather, she must actually be their great aunt, therefore their grandfather's sister is what I took her to be.
Yeah, that's kind of the general idea I was going with.
Yeah.
With her, because you don't really get any further information on her relation to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
We only really get like what's relevant to the episode, or very little that is relevant to the episode, I suppose. Because relatively early on, she gets taken by one of the aliens, which in this episode, I believe they actually identify what they are, but that's not until late in the episode.
Mm-hmm.
They call themselves Limaxes. I do like that Ben's like, he's like very bored there, so he like turns into Ghost Freak and like goes running around the place to see what he can do for fun. Or before he actually leaves, he like hovers like right up to Gwen, because she's got like a shell and she's like listening to the ocean, and he like goes right up to her and goes, "Loser," like,
yeah.
and then like momentarily freaks her out, and then he like flies away. I also like the fact that when he's invisible, he has like this like dark grayish, almost blackish color to him, and then when he's visible, he's more of a lighter gray. I also find it funny that when he's like driving like a go-kart, the other people in the area, all they see is a go-kart just driving itself.
Yes.
I also get anything of Ben just sort of exploring the place and seeing who else has been taken by the aliens. Like we see one woman trying to hit a fly, and then it lands on the ceiling, so she jumps on the ceiling and eats it. Actually, even before they get out of the RV, we also see one of the other old people acting very strange. Like we see one woman like fall off the roof, but kind of jump off and do a backflip. And then and then while he's exploring, he sees, I believe it's the neighbor, Marty, I think is his name. And obviously we do actually see one of the Limaxes actually take him. Well, we don't see the Limax, but we like definitely see the like the shadowy outline of one of the Limaxes taking him. And when I believe when he's like following or the Limax disguised as Marty, it's holding a rug that's been like rolled up, and I'm pretty sure that rug is actually the real Marty who's been rolled up into that,
Right.
because obviously we later see that the Limaxes have everyone podded up, and some inside their ship and some just sort of outside, and they've entered there through a hole in the ground that's being covered by some trash cans, and that's where the alien imposter is taking the rug. So I'm pretty sure Marty's unconscious body is like rolled up in there. And then right as Ben gets to the trash cans to see what Marty's doing, that's when the Onyx decides that that's when it's going to time out and transform him back. And he like the Limax like hears the sound and like turns around and like notices him, and then Ben like freaks out and like runs away, and then we get a chase where the Limax is like trying to get Ben. He's like stretching his arms out like Mr. Fantastic. And we also see that when Ben's actually in the go-kart and he's like trying to get the Limax to like trying to get away from the Limax, he uses a golf club to like hit his arm, and it actually like severs his arm off. Although I think the hand just sort of dissolves away, because we don't actually see what happens to the hand after that.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that Ben, when he like gets back to Vera's house and he's like explaining what happened to Gwen and Grandpa Max, he does actually like explain it in like a way that a child would. Like he like somewhat exaggerates it, because the way he explains what happened to Gwen and Grandpa Max isn't exactly how it happened. Because he mentions the guy like moving through the fence, but earlier in the episode he doesn't actually do that. He just stretches over the fence. So were there any other things that you noticed about this episode?
So the one thing that stood out to me in this, and it just, in a lot of ways, it was, like a lot of these kind of episodic, standalone kind of thing, except I did catch at the end, and I didn't know if this was just them being cheeky or if this had some sort of greater purpose, but the whole thing about the question being left open whether or not their aunt is aware of the greater story going on. She makes some joke about, and let me know how things turn out with those aliens. It's like, you're joking, right? And she goes, yeah, of course. And then as they're leaving, she kind of smiles. And, it does cause you to think, well, is there, something in that, or is that just them being cheeky?
Probably is them being cheeky, because we never actually see Aunt Vera again, and this whole plot of this episode, this is like very much just a one-off.
Yeah.
I also like that during the chase, where that one Limax disguised as Marty is chasing Ben, we do actually get a hint at how to actually defeat or how to actually defeat the Limaxes, because like a garden hose starts going off where Ben crashes, and the Limax chasing him like is about to get him, and then he sees the water going off near him, and he quickly retracts and then runs away.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a little hint of that. And also at the start of the episode, we also, I suppose we could call this Chekhov's gun, because
Sure.
Gwen uses a water pistol to squirt Ben with it, and obviously that water pistol then comes into play at the end of the episode.
Right. They definitely laid the groundwork for the fact that they were vulnerable to water.
Yeah. And I've also noted that when Grandpa Max, when he like separates from them, I don't know if they don't actually show this, but at some point the Limaxes then also take him as well.
Yep.
Because later in the episode we then see a Limax disguised as Grandpa Max. And when Ben has like transformed into Wild Mutt and Gwen's there as well, there is like this one moment where Wild Mutt like makes a whole bunch of noises at Gwen, and then she's like immediately is like, yep, okay, and then turns around and like starts trying to get the hatch open. And she even like points out the fact that she like, somehow understood that. She's like, oh, this is freaky, I'm starting to speak mutt. It's actually a shame they never come back to that.
Yeah.
Because I would have liked to have seen like them go more into depth on whether or not Gwen's actually learning to understand how Wild Mutt talks, or if it is just a case of like just a minor situational thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also noted that there is actually a comment that kind of suggests the Limaxes, because they do make reference to the fact that they eat people. They do also say that they mention about not really wanting to eat kids, but rather preferring to eat the elderly.
Right.
It's
saying
kind of like
that
this
children were too chewy. They need time to, soften up, so to speak.
Yeah, and I've noted that kind of sounds like the same way that we would drink wine or like some
Yeah.
form of alcohol. Like it's like we can drink those when they're like new and out of the bottle, but it's like they taste better if they've like been left to age for a while.
Right.
It's like these Limaxes kind of had to do the same thing, but with people. And then we've also got when Ben and Gwen reach the Limax's ship. I do like the fact that Ben, like, he turns into Heat Blast, because like he isn't fully aware of, he doesn't have all the information on these Limaxes, so he doesn't really know what the best alien would be to fight them. He just immediately assumes which alien would be best.
Right.
So he like turns into Heat Blast, and then he like fires a big wave of fire at them, and they're just completely unfazed by it. And then they like merge into one big alien, one big blob. And I believe they directly say that they live for the heat. And
right. And in the very stereotypical, Republic serial villain, thing, revealing the big secret, why do you think we came here to the desert in the middle of summer?
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing you'd want to let your adversary, who clearly is clueless, in on, but
Yeah.
it's a story contrivance.
Yeah. And then both Ben and Gwen then do figure out that obviously water is the thing that will defeat them. Obviously, the scene earlier with Ben being chased by the Limax disguised as Marty, and also a scene where one Limax disguised as Aunt Vera like freaks out when some water is spilt on the floor, and it like drifts towards her, and she like jumps up and does the splits to avoid it.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's very unusual. And I think Gwen I think it's either Gwen or Ben. One of them like immediately recognizes that as being unusual behavior. Yeah, so Gwen uses the war pistol to shoot the Limaxes, and obviously Ben uses his powers as heat blast to blow up a water pipe above them. Although while he's fighting the Limax, they've like freed Grandpa Max, and then Gwen and Grandpa Max start transporting some of the pods out of the ship. Although right at the end, before after they've like defeated most of the Limax and they've like retreated back to their ship, I think like one of the Limaxes is still on Earth, because we see it in like a post-credit scene where one's just slithering through the caves.
That was another thing that a lot of these episodes end. It wraps up the immediate story, but it usually leaves a story hook so that you could always revisit, you know, these characters or this plot or whatever.
Yeah. It is strange that the Limaxes overall are mostly forgotten about in the rest of all of the other shows.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole plot point of one still being on Earth is basically ignored. So that'd be all of your notes on this episode?
Yeah, I didn't have much to say on that one. Just that.
Still got a few episodes to go before I have like very little to say about some of these. The next episode is Hunted, and this is one that's actually a little more significant to the overall plot.
Right.
So we have Vilgax hiring some bounty hunters. I actually do like the fact that we see 3 bounty hunters. We obviously he's gonna he's testing them, and obviously I would imagine he would hire one of them, but I like the fact that he chooses to hire all 3 of them after he sees what they can do. I also noted the purplish bounty hunter who speaks like in a robotic language. I have noted he does kind of remind me of Boba Fett in a way. See, he definitely has that like Boba Fett like mystique to it. You know how Boba Fett in the original trilogy,
right,
you didn't really know much about him, and he was mostly displayed as being basically like a mysterious badass, basically. Right. And that kind of most of people who watch the original trilogy kind of, well, not everyone would cling to Boba Fett, but like a lot of people would like become interested in learning more about Boba Fett and him as a character overall.
Yeah,
and it's very similar here with the purple bounty hunter, whose name is 66. Don't really have much to say about the other bounty hunter, the big crab guy. But
yeah. I mean, except that, you know, he's the first one they encounter, and you know, when he does resurface later, it's like, hey, remember me?
Yeah. And then the third bounty hunter, whose name is Tetrax, he's definitely one of the more interesting of the 3, or in relation to this episode at least.
Mm-hmm.
We do see Tetrax again later on in the show, but not really this season. I do like that after we've seen Vilgax hiring the bounty hunters, we then get a scene of Grandpa Max who's set up this like training yard.
Yeah.
And he's like saying to Ben to like put more thought into like which alien he chooses and like how he approaches the different fights. And that's like an overall theme of the episode, is Ben like trying to think more tactically about the way he uses the Omnitrix. Because I believe the line Grandpa Max says is, "Don't try to muscle it." I think he says, think about it or try to think. I believe he says might isn't always right as well.
Right. That's exactly right. To which Ben replies, yes, but it's always fun.
Yeah, we have him like using Diamond Head, and he's like firing shards from his hand.
Yeah.
He's like doing all kinds of trick shots and everything.
And then when it goes wrong, he's responsible for piercing the fuel line on the truck.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't notice that sooner, considering I'm pretty sure the shards would have made like a mark in the exterior of the
Right.
RV.
Right. But then you notice that when he feels bad for being responsible for that, he wants to help. But his first inclination for how to help is, I can turn into another form. How is that going to help us? You know? Although I suppose if he turned himself into gray Matt, you know.
Yeah, the grey matter. I think, yeah, and then while they're like momentarily stranded in the it's like abandoned town or abandoned mining town, then goes into like one of the random buildings, and once again decides to kind of pull some kind of like prank on Gwen again. I think he turns into Ghost Freak while he's in there.
Yep.
Hold on a minute. I've got to step away for a moment. Why don't you talk about what some of the things you noticed about the episode?
Sure,
will
do.
Step away.
So, I don't want to take any wind out of Matt's sails, but what we do have with Tetrax is he becomes our conduit to get a little bit more insight into the overall story, the greater story that, again, we're seeing it all from Ben's point of view. So we're learning about what's going on outside of the world at large, kind of as he does. So it definitely requires a bit of patience. I mean, as a viewer, you're kind of looking forward to getting these details, but they're coming in drips and drabs. But now he's forced into a situation where he has to deal with multiple threats that are directly related to the object that he's been entrusted with. And you're back?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that this is a situation where, we're learning about the greater story at large from Ben's point of view. We're learning as he does, and we would certainly want to know.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
We would certainly want to know these details up front, but we have to be patient and learn them as we go. And in this episode, we're about to get multiple, threats that tie directly to the overarching story and the object that he, has been entrusted with.
Yeah. Yeah. So this one of the things I noticed early on. We do actually get like a bit of conflict between the three bounty hunters early on, specifically for Tetrax and 6-6. Not so much from Crab. He just sort of stands off to the side and kind of, in a way, like, I suppose, in a way, like kids would argue. Like you'd have two of them arguing, and then you have a third kid off to the side, kind of stoking them both on. Yeah. And this is also the first time Ben hears like the actual name of the Omnitrix, because he's been referring to it as the Watch the whole time, and this is the first time he actually hears the name Omnitrix. Like at first they have no idea what they're talking about, and Gwen's just like, he's like, duh, he means the Watch. What else would he be here for?
Yeah.
I believe this is also an instance where Ben like mentions when as he's Ghost Freak, I think after turning back he does kind of mention something about like not quite feeling like himself after he turns back. Like he feels like, I don't know if he it's a very light reference to what will be coming later on. And I also really like the bit at the end with Tetrax and him like talking to Ben about like about his choice of alien and his overall tactics.
Right. We do get a little bit more of what he was getting from his grandfather about, might not always being right, and using your head, tactics, and so forth. You also get a little bit of the hero versus villain philosophy here, and a bit of the how would you say, the subversion of expectations, I suppose, about Tetrax, and what his motivations are.
Yeah, because you think he's just like just the same motive as the other two bounty hunters.
He's there as a bounty hunter, so you just assume he's on the side of the guy that's paying him. When he makes a revelation that no, he's here because there's a more positive reason to get a hold of the Omnitrix.
And also when he's turned into Diamond Head to try and fight off Six Six and Crab, he then he's basically overpowered by the both of them, and then Tetrax comes in, throws a smoke bomb, and then carries Ben out of there. And we ever get a moment where Tetrax says, like, it's disturbing how little you understand this alien's abilities.
Yeah.
Which,
well, and in fairness, it's like he really has no context. This thing literally fell on him, and it didn't come with an instruction manual, kind of a Greatest American Hero kind of, that was another thing that I thought of. I don't know if you're aware of that show from the 80s with William Catt, a guy that just stumbles on this, aliens give him this suit, they give him superpowers, and he loses the handbook, so he doesn't know how to control it. Very similar situation here. So yeah, it is like giving a kid a gun and not giving them any training, could be very dangerous.
There is actually one thing about Tetrax's speech when he mentions about Ben not really understanding the alien he's transformed into. That does actually kind of go in later on. We do actually get an idea of like that kind of idea does get expanded on a little more, and like the overall purpose of the Omnitrix's existence and why it was created.
Kind of relates to what I was talking about with the whole personalities of the individual aliens.
Yeah, because obviously Tetrax is one of the same species as Diamond Head, which I believe they're called Petrosapien, I believe what they're called. But the first season they don't really go into like the names of the different alien species. I think it's not until like the second season when they actually start identifying the different species of the varied aliens. Like grey matter is a part of the species Galvin. And one little detail that I like is the alien Upgrade is part of the species that are called galvanic mechamorph. And they're actually called this because the galvanic mechamorphs are actually species that were created by the Galvin, and that's why they have a similar name to them. And you obviously have Forearms is Tetramand, I believe is the species name. And they're a warrior species, which you'd kind of expect with them being super strong and having 4 arms. I also like the fact that Tetrax says to Ben that he can't get off the planet without the hoverboard, and then and at the end of the episode, he that Ben then points out to him.
Well, you said you couldn't leave without this. It was a strategic. What was it? Strategic.
I think he said selective disinformation.
Selective disinformation. Huh? He lied.
And also like the Tetrax then gives Ben the hoverboard. Although sadly he won't use that hoverboard very much. It's kind of a missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
So have you got all of your notes for this episode? Or got all your notes out?
Well, yeah, I think I kind of went through most of what I wanted to say about this, when you stepped away. Really, this is our big opportunity from Ben's point of view to get the backstory, at least some of it. Definitely get a peek through the keyhole that there's a much greater story going on here. Hints to, things we'll learn in the future. And yeah. A bigger story to come, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Next episode, Tourist Trap. I definitely enjoyed this one. Obviously, like we said before, Dwight Schultz voices the mayor. The town of Sparksville itself, it's actually kind of cool in like the like a novelty kind of way. He's got giant fishbowl.
A reference to a lot of the little tourist traps along historic Route 66 here in the United States. And since Route 66, pretty much dried up as far as its importance to travel, a lot of the towns along the way have lost their income stream. So they became just like this, where there's very few people left in those towns. With very little means to make an income. So unless you really are going out of your way to see, the world's largest ball of rubber bands, such things actually do exist, by the way. Big balls of string, big balls of rubber bands, crazy stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, pretty accurate. But also noticing the name of the town, Sparks, that's, clearly inferring something about the history of this little town. A little allusion to, what's to come too.
Yeah. With the megawatts. I also noticed one thing when Ben and Gwen were actually going to the giant rubber band ball, which is just called It. There's one thing that I noticed in the actual barn. There's a whole bunch of signs that say don't touch it, don't use electronics near it, don't take photos, all that stuff.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, if it says no electrical equipment near it, why are the signs so close to it then? They're technically electrical equipment as well.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And you even have one sign that's directly in front of the rubber band ball.
Yeah, good point.
It just sort of lifts up and has the band ball right behind it. I also really like Dwight Schultz's very deadpan delivery to the way the character talks.
Right.
And also have Ben and Gwen they feel like they've been punked, so they decide to pull a prank of their own.
Right. Which doesn't go well.
Yeah. Oh, hello, Samuel Proctor. It took a while, but there's finally someone here.
Yep. Welcome. Yeah, we're just going through the episodes of the first season.
You also have after Ben turns into Four Arms and starts like messing with the rubber band ball, and like he accidentally like lets go of it and it starts bouncing around the town and hitting everything. And then that's when we get the megawatts actually getting out of the rubber band ball,
Right.
because he like when he turns back, the Omnitrix is like right near it, and we see a little bit of like red electricity come off of the Omnitrix and go onto the rubber band ball. I think that's the first time we actually see any kind of energy coming off of the Omnitrix.
Right. Also, a little bit later, when you see Megawatt, bouncing around, and he hides behind Ben, and he hides behind Gwen, and he pokes his head
Yeah,
out. At one point, he does it right around the Omnitrix, and it's like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? And
yeah,
it doesn't really go anywhere, but there is that moment of uh-oh.
yeah. And we have like the megawatt flying around. When it first exits the rubber band ball, it like flies directly through the sign, takes out one of the letters. So then the sign says, I think it says "Welcome to Sparksville," but he takes out. I'm not sure which letter he takes out, but I think he the sign like then says "We come to Sparksville" because he like took out because he flies right through one of the letters.
Yeah, right through the L. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, I suppose that technically establishes the megawatt itself as kind of I suppose, a villainous trickster because he obviously the thing obviously likes pulling pranks and making jokes, but like in a
Well,
more dangerous and
yes,
lethal way.
but it does leave you with, the question: is this, is his, uh, orneriness maybe merited? I mean, if you're going to be trapped inside a giant rubber band ball, for who knows how long, I could understand you wanting to get a little bit of revenge.
Yeah,
But there's also the implication of, well, what came before this?
yeah. And then we also have the mayor like when after the megawatts like torn through the town and like everyone starts noticing it, and like the mayor like like obviously the mayor knew about this,
Mm-hmm.
like the sign saying not what not to do and everything around it.
Yeah.
It's like he like kind of hints at where the megawatt came from because like some people think it's static clean come alive. He's like others think it's I think he said a ball of electricity or something like that, or a ball of electricity run amok. I think is what he
Yeah.
says. And then like wait maybe it's an alien. And he's like an alien? That's just kooky talk.
Yeah, exactly. Which actually is the most plausible of the suggestions based on what we know as an audience.
Yeah. I also like that this is another instance of Ben mistransforming. We don't know what alien he intended, but we do know that he transforms into Upgrade.
Right.
And like when like mentions it, and he's like, "Yeah, it is complicated. You wouldn't understand." He's like, "The watch didn't let you turn into what you wanted." He's like, "Shut up."
Yeah.
He's like, "We never learn what alien he actually wanted to turn into, but there's obviously another instance of him mistransforming." And also, he mentions like he directly mentions that Upgrade is made of living metal
Right.
because he grabs the megawatt and it just shocks him and it
Yeah.
sends him flying.
But it almost makes you hope that he can figure out some way to manipulate electricity using that form too. So,
Yeah. Although we do still get him use Upgrade's powers in a unique way because he fires like this green laser blast from his eye, or like
yeah.
the circular eye thing on his head.
Yep.
Although he only does it once for some reason. Because and then obviously he then doesn't do that again for some reason, and then he like grabs a manhole cover and throws that at the megawatt, and it splits it in half, and then it like duplicates itself into a second megawatt.
Yep.
And then that just makes the situation worse.
Little bit of Fantasia Mickey there.
Yeah. And then we do get Gwen and Grandpa Max actually using a more intelligent way of trying to defeat the megawatts by using the giant thermometer as a lightning rod. Although obviously that just like sends them into the ground, and then they're like, and I think they go into like the phone lines, and then they come out. Well, this time they come out as like a whole bunch of megawatts rather than just two of them. What else? Oh yeah, and when the megawatts have actually like disappeared, we do get like a brief moment where we see Ben holding up the Omnitrix, and like the faceplate activates by itself. And it's like kind of suggesting like a psychological connection between Ben and the Omnitrix itself. Although that's the only time we see that, though. I also do find it funny that the megawatts, as part of their like their havoc, they cause the world's largest toothpicks to the container to shatter, and all the toothpicks to start flying down like spears.
Yeah.
And the mayor's just sitting there on the bench. He's like, "Oh, the humanity!" He's like in a very deadpan way. Like he doesn't even move or try to dodge in any way, and none of them hit him at all. It's almost as if he's like been around this sort of behavior from the megawatt for a while, and he's just kind of desensitized to it.
Yeah, you definitely get the impression that there's some history here.
And then obviously we get later on where the megawatts have taken or brought to life the planetarium exhibit, and then they start like they run off to like a random dam that's nearby.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I don't have a clue how near that dam actually is to the town. I know sometimes this show does kind of play around with like geographic location and also a sense of time as well. That's also a little stretched every now and then. I do like the way that they actually like defeat the megawatts by like tricking them into going inside the giant fishbowl, and then Bender's like heat blast kind of melting over the top, so it's a proper container.
Right.
And we get a brief moment where like before that, when the megawatts like break the dam, and Ben flies down, and he quickly is like, "Oh, better seal that up fast." He's like definitely thinking about some of the other stuff around him.
Yeah, he's a better hero than Zack Snyder's Superman.
And he's even more heroic in some of the later shows, because obviously by that point we would be following like the 15 and 16-year-old Ben,
right,
who's been doing this for a couple years. No, wait, no, actually, Ben actually keeps the Omnitrix until he's like 11. Then he we don't see him remove it, but at some point when he's like 11, he does remove the Omnitrix. And then during Alien Force, it starts with 15-year-old Ben without the Omnitrix, and he like decides to put it back on again.
And so at some point he is able to take it off.
Yeah, but we never see like how he gets it off.
Gotcha.
Because this show does take a lot of time to establish that the Omnitrix is very much attached to Ben and is not easy to get off.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In fact, the next episode, Kevin 11, definitely adds more to the idea of the Omnitrix being a part of Ben. Well, that's more to do with at the end of the episode. But yeah, with this episode, we get introduced to another character named Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
or his name's Kevin or Kevin Levin, and his middle name is Ethan, so it's like 11. Um,
Yeah. Kevin
although we don't learn his middle
Yeah.
name until a lot later on, but that's just a minor detail I'd like to add. There's one thing right at the very beginning when they're when they're like when Grandmax is like paying for for the room in the hotel, and Ben like sneaks off to play like a restricted, like a VIP restriction, or like a game that's been VIP restricted.
Yeah.
And then he turns in, he tries to get in there by himself when the guard stops him. Then he turns into a Ghost Freak and sneaks past and starts playing the game. And then like once he's turned back, the guard then catches him and throws them out. At this point, you do kind of feel bad for Max because like he's paid for the room in the hotel, and then Ben does something reckless and gets them all kicked out.
Right.
And then we also get Ben, like Grandpa Max, like I suppose very justifiably talks to Ben about this. He gets kind of mad at him. They sort of both get mad at each other.
Well, it becomes another one of those, not being selfish with your abilities and using them frivolously. And Kevin ends up becoming something of a tempter type of character, kind of leading Ben astray.
Yeah, I have actually noted that Kevin definitely feels like the kind of character. It's like he definitely feels like what Ben would be like if he didn't have Gwen and Grandpa Max with him.
Excellent observation. Yeah.
And obviously we have Kevin, who also has like his own unique power where he can absorb energy. And we get a little bit of Kevin's like background and like why he's by himself. We don't get anything about how or why he has these powers.
Right. That's another, consternating factor, because it's like you want to know, is this somehow also tied into the larger story, or is this completely unrelated? It is kind of odd.
Yeah. And also this is where Ben actually like first meets Kevin in an arcade, which I believe the arcade's called the Total Zone, I think is the name. Which is actually the actual arcade itself is actually an area we do actually come back to in like a later show.
Oh.
And also this arcade that we revisit a lot later on is also tied to a story relating to Kevin. We get like a couple of gang punks like walking up to Kevin because he's like trashed one of their hideouts. And obviously at this point Ben doesn't really know much about Kevin, just that Kevin has kind of helped him out.
Yeah.
So he transforms to accelerate and takes out the gang punks, and doesn't directly tell Kevin that it's him, but he kind of gives some kind of look to Kevin. Kevin kind of, I feel like Kevin probably would have figured out that that's Ben at some point.
Probably. Yeah.
And
but it does give Ben the opportunity to, decide to trust him and, reveal the secret to him.
Yeah. And we also get Ben and Kevin then like they walk off and leave Gwen behind, and she goes back to the RV. And while Kevin's like showing Ben around where he lives, he also gives us like a bit of insight into why he's by himself, but doesn't he overlooks the part about how he has his powers. I would imagine he probably doesn't even know.
Possibly.
Yeah. And then Kevin because Ben tells Kevin why Grandpa Max is angry with him, and like tells him about that and why that happened. And then that results with Kevin like telling him, because it's all about the Sumo Slammer video game that he got snuck in to play. And I think they mentioned that the game's not out until Christmas, so it's obviously a couple months away. And the Kevin tells him about a warehouse that he knows about where the game's being stored. So both of them sneak there and break in, and then like grab a couple of copies of the game. Although I feel like this might be an instance of possibly stretching like Ben's like overall character to tell this story.
Yeah, because it does really seem like it would go beyond what even Kevin would consider okay.
Yeah, because Kevin's definitely he's obviously he definitely has some psychological issues and some problems of his own. But like someone like someone like Ben,
Yeah,
he has been shown a few times before to have an okay understanding of the difference between what's right and wrong.
right.
So,
In fact, you could even go back to the first instance where Kevin uses his ability to make the tokens pop out of the machine, and Gwen says, "You can't just take those. That's not right." There was a perfect opportunity there for Ben to go, "Well, this place ripped me off. I'm just, but then instead of taking a whole bunch, if you just take one, then you could justify it and say, well, I'm just recouping my losses here,
Yeah.
this is fair for me to take the one,
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't quite get that far into it.
Yeah. And then we also, after they've broken into the warehouse, immediately we get a whole bunch of police around the building straight away. I'm just thinking, how long did it take them to get there? Because it kind of feels like they were probably there waiting for someone to break in.
Yeah.
And then obviously Ben turns into Stinkfly, and they get and carries Kevin out of there, and they try and get away from them. And then Ben actually Kevin propositions him, or after they've got away, then Kevin propositions him to be partners and work together. And we also get the first hint of Kevin being somewhat interested in the Omnitrix itself, because Ben does mention that it doesn't quite work properly, and Kevin's like, maybe I can get it to work.
Right. You definitely get the distinct impression, and this seems very in keeping with what you know of Kevin at this point. He probably wants to steal it for himself. It's something that he would find useful. When he realizes that's not an option, it's not even possible. Well, then maybe we could be partners, and now I'll just find a way to make you work for me.
Yeah, and then as right after they form a partnership, they then go into a train tracks an underground train track, and switch off or switch the tracks, so that I think it's a random a train carrying innocent people crash into a different train that's carrying a whole bunch of money. I believe that's what it was. And then it's at that point that Ben's like, yeah, you can't do this. This is going too far. And then Ben tries to stop him, and Well, actually, this is another instance of Ben mistransforming. I think this time he does say what alien he wanted, but we do get the distinct impression that he's again transforming into an alien that he didn't choose.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like that Kevin uses his powers to overload all the lights, and we get this like neat and this neat effect where it's all dark and the only light in the room is Ben's heat blast.
Yeah.
And then obviously Kevin like jumps on him from behind and like absorbs some of Heat Blast's powers. I don't know how that works exactly, unless he's absorbing like the energy from the Omnitrix.
Well, yeah, that was the impression that was, yeah, that I got from it anyway.
I also like the fact that after he's like partially turned into like a version of Heat Blast himself, his fire, you actually see like a red highlight to the fire. Because when Ben's Heat Blast, it's more of an orange and yellow, but when you see Kevin using the powers, it's more of a red and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a small detail that I noticed about it. And also when Ben actually stops Kevin from causing the train crash, he then well, he almost gets hit by the train himself, but he kind of turns into a fire tornado and he like goes, and the train goes right through him. And he's like right on top of the train. Although there's one moment where he melts a hole in the train so he can properly hold on. And I feel like when he turns back, that would probably still be hot enough to burn him.
Right.
But they don't really draw any attention to that. They just sort of basically ignore that. And I also like the fact that even though Ben's like Grandpa Max is still like mad about him about all of what he's done. Ben's like he recognizes that, but then he then also recognizes the immediate threat of the fact that Kevin now has some of Heat Blast's powers,
Right.
and he's a more unstable individual and could probably cause a lot more havoc with the powers than what Ben would.
Because he would do it intentionally.
Yeah, and we even see Kevin like at the like directly at the gang that attacked him earlier in the episode. Like he's at their hideout, and we even see Ben turn into forearms again. I think this is the yeah, I think it's definitely been a few episodes since he turned into forearms. We even see I think there's one moment where he's like inside the RV and he's like filling up the entire RV, the interior of the RV when he turns into forearms.
Yeah.
Which is slightly strange because when he's actually out with the RV, he doesn't
He's not
look like
that
he would
big,
be
yeah.
that big.
Yeah.
And then we get then we see that Kevin's absorbing of Heat Blast powers is actually only temporary because it then fades away. And then he like, I think he attempts to use leftover power to like fry the gang members that are pinned under some kind of like giant pipe. So Ben like grabs him and then he like Kevin puts his hands on like forearms and like absorbs forearms' power. And we even see like an extra arm kind of grow out of his shoulder. Well, there is one detail I noticed when I was rewatching the episode, is that when Kevin absorbs forearms' powers, he actually has 6 arms because he has his 2 normal arms that have grown big, and then 2 extra arms that have grown out of his shoulders. But then we have 2 tiny little arms on the front of his chest.
Gotcha.
When I actually saw the last few times I watched the episode, I never noticed that. I just thought he grew 2 extra pair of arms. But actually, it's not that at all. He actually did grow like another pair on his chest.
Wow. Yeah, I missed that too.
And then we get another first for this episode when Kevin is under a pile of rocks after fighting Ben, and Ben has like turned back to himself, and Kevin tries grabbing the Omnitrix, and he's like trying to pull it off his arm. This is the first instance of the Omnitrix having like an energy feedback pulse as like a defensive measure, because like the blast, like, because we get this green wave that like blasts Kevin away, and also like the forearms powers, then they also fade from him as well. And then like right at the very end of the episode, actually there's one part where Grandpa Max says that he's like, my trust is something you're gonna have to earn back.
Yeah.
He's like, I feel like the episode probably should have ended right there at that point, rather than cut to underground train line and like us seeing Kevin like using like heat blasts fire powers, and
Yeah.
and hinting at a later episode, because Kevin does actually come back in a season 2 episode.
But that's what I mean. There always seems to be that stinger that leaves whatever, the story was possibly open-ended for return.
Yeah. Now we move on to the next episode, The Alliance. This one is also another instance of having more of a connection to the overarching plot. So Vilgax sends out some advanced drones to try and track the Omnitrix. And at the same time, we have Ben Gwen. Yeah, Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max at like a car wash, I think, or like some kind of convenience store, when a bunch of female robbers try and take the money out of like an armored transport. Although at first we don't realize that they're female because they're wearing helmets.
Right.
And Ben like turns into forearms and starts fighting them. And when he actually like picks up 2 of them and takes their helmets off, and like he realizes that they're all women, and he's like I don't want to hurt you. And then one of the leader of the group blasts him from behind while he's distracted. And it's also at this point that the drones that Vilgax sends out then attack Ben, which is actually kind of somewhat of a convenience, but also makes sense because Ben is using the Omnitrix, so they are able to track him.
Right.
I think they even mentioned about these drones having like advanced trackers. And yeah, the leader of these female like robbers, her name is Rojo. I don't think the episode ever mentions her name at all, but her name is mentioned in the credits, because we do actually learn her name a lot later on in the show, because she does appear one more time later on.
Mm.
There's definitely a few times in this show where they later on have information that we don't actually see them learn, they just suddenly have. Because in this episode they never learn that her name is Rojo, but in a later episode when they see her again, they identify her by name, despite the fact that we never at any point learn or see them learn her name. I've also noticed that when like Grandpa Max gets taken out by some of the fallen debris, and Ben like destroys the drones and then takes out all of the robbers, and then quickly gets Grandpa Max and Gwen to a hospital. And then Rojo like wakes up and she's like confused why there are drones like attacking here. So she picks up one of them and then it like I'm not sure what it is, but like the bottom part of it like moves and then extends out and attaches to her, and like merges with her and turns into some kind of cyborg.
Right.
And I also like the fact that like Rojo's like cyborg form and her like Vilgax like commanding her to get the Omnitrix for him. It's kind of paralleling the '86 Transformers movie, because you have Rojo who's been enhanced by one of Vilgax's machines, and then kind of Rojo fills the position of Galvatron, and Vilgax fills the position of Unicron.
Yeah.
And it's like the two characters have that kind of relationship, the same as Vilgax, or the same as Unicron and Galvatron. I don't know if that was an intentional thing, or if that's just a coincidence that I noticed.
Yeah, I'm not sure to what extent they would be influenced by that, but it is a part of the narrative that does kind of naturally flow. So, parallel evolution, so to speak.
Yeah. I also like that when Ben is at the hospital and Grandpa Max is there, I do like the fact that Ben like suggests different ways that he could use the Omnitrix to help make Grandpa Max better.
Yeah.
Like he suggests turning it to upgrade and merging with the machinery to make him better. Then he also suggests maybe turning into Ghost Freak and merging with Grandpa Max to try and make him better. Because like I do like the fact that this is like a moment where he like sincerely and earnestly wants to help Grandpa Max with the Omnitrix. And also with him like messing with the Omnitrix, it kind of alerts the like cyborg Rojo to his position.
Right.
And I also like that when she crashes through the window and starts demanding the Omnitrix, Ben actually like taunts her and says, "You want it? Come and get it," and actually runs away and out of the hospital and leads her away from all of the people
Once
there.
again, he's a better hero than Zack Snyder's Superman.
Yeah. And also when he's like outside of the hospital, and Rojo blasts the mountain to cause a whole bunch of rocks to fall down, and he turns into Heat Blast. I believe this is another instance of mistransformation. But like while he's Heat Blast, he like says to Gwen, he's like, "Scissors cut paper, fire melts rock," right? And I'm just thinking, I mean that's accurate, but I'm pretty sure you have to get the rocks to be at a pretty high temperature for them to melt.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, I mean, Heat Blast probably has the capability to actually like get hot enough to melt rock. He'd probably have to have like a continuous burst on them.
Yeah.
All he really does is end up just set them on fire, so they're flaming rocks.
Right.
And then like he melts uses his fire to melt the ambulances. I'm not sure why or how that would help, because I know the rocks kind of fall down and then deflect off the melted ambulances and start rolling the other way. And then he obviously like thought far enough ahead to try that, but didn't think far enough ahead to like where the rocks would then go after they've been deflected by the ambulances. Because Gwen points out that there are people at the bottom of the ravine that the rocks are falling down. So like he jumps down, and obviously this is when Rojo comes in and attacks Ben while he's doing this. Although I do like the fact that he does this kind of fire pulse thing to kind of get her off of him, and then he fires a blast at the bridge, so the rocks then fall down into the water rather than going along the bridge and hurting people. and also then he like continues fighting Rojo a little further away. Although he does sort of, I don't think it's like a heavily populated area where they start fighting. There's definitely people around, but I don't think it's like a densely populated city. And also it's not completely Ben's fault that they're fighting in that area, because Rojo did like grab him and throw him over there and then start blasting him.
Right.
I also like that when Rojo becomes a cyborg, her first impulse is to shoot at the police that try and arrest her, and also to then attempt to rob a jewelry store. But then she learns that when she actually grabs the jewels, she actually like accidentally like crushes them into dust without really like realizing it.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that Vilgax like communicates with her and commands her to get the Omnitrix. I also like that there's two different times when Vilgax like communicates with Rojo. Like the first one when he initially forces her to go after the Omnitrix, and then the second time after Ben beats her as Heat Blast. Vilgax then tells Rojo to actually like make Ben like come to her rather than her chase after him.
Mm-hmm.
So then she like starts attacking the police station, which I feel like is probably like, obviously she could have chose any any area with a heavily amount of people,
But she chose one that was also beneficial to her.
Yeah, it's like, and when she's attacking it, like Ben arrives as Accelerate, or there is a little bit in the middle where Ben chooses to leave Gwen and Grandpa Max because he feels like he's bringing unnecessary danger to them.
Right. So again, not only is he trying to help, there's a heroic self-sacrifice here. Like, I I need them, but I'm also bringing them danger. It's better for them if I'm not around.
Yeah. And then while Ben's fighting Rojo as Accelerate, there's actually one thing I noticed. It's very quick, but because Accelerate has these like pincer-like fingers.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a moment where while he's fighting Rojo, we actually see like actual fists. Like, and I don't know if like his hands turn into a fist or if that's like a momentary thing, because we never see that again.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time where we actually see Accelerate with like actual more humanoid looking hands. And this is also when because Gwen like sees the news and like figures out where Ben's gone, and she like sneaks there. This is also where Gwen reminds Ben that even though it would be safer for him to not be around them, they also do like bring some amount of help to him.
Right.
Because we even have Grandpa Max ringing Ben and like giving him some like helpful advice when fighting Rojo. Because he suggests that if he can't defeat her from the outside, then to defeat her from the inside. And then that's where Ben then gets the idea to turn into Upgrade, and like, because obviously Rojo is a cyborg, so he uses Upgrade to like merge with her, and then this is where Ben first sees Vilgax. Well, this is the first time Ben actually sees him, and like, and we get Vilgax basically threatening Ben and telling him that he's like, yeah, basically telling Ben that he'll be coming for him and the Omnitrix itself. And then Ben also uses Upgrade to basically remove all of the cybernetic upgrades to Rojo to make her human again. And we also get, while Rojo is knocked out and the gym, like the gymnasium that they're like inside, is slowly collapsing. We do actually see Ben actually picks up Rojo and carries her out of the place, and then he like gives her to the police, which is another heroic moment for him. And we also get right at the very end when Ben's telling Grandpa Max and Gwen about like seeing Vilgax. Well, he doesn't know his name because he didn't learn Vilgax's name at that point. We do see that when when Ben mentions Vilgax, we do actually see Grandpa Max looks very concerned, and Ben even like points that out. He's like, because Vilgax said to Ben to be very afraid, and Ben says this to Grandpa Max, and he's like, "Well, Grandpa Max, you look afraid."
Yeah,
which is a further hint towards like a past. What about Grandpa Max's past? Is there anything else you would like to add?
no, and I did have just a question, and if you think it better to hold off on answering that, that's fine. But I certainly was kind of wondering if we at some point do get some insight into what Grandpa knows that goes beyond what we see.
We do get more answers of that in the final episode. Yeah, it's mostly the final episode of this season, and then the first episode of the second season where we get more clarification on that.
Gotcha.
And now we're on the episode Last Laugh. And this is another one that kind of hints at further things to come, but doesn't actually like fully resolve anything in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the resolution for what is set up in this episode will be done in the next season. So one thing that I noticed is the primary villain of this episode, Zombozo. He is actually voiced. The actor who voices the character also voiced the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt.
I
don't know if
okay, now that you say that, I can kind of get that. Sure.
Yeah. And it's this episode that kind of goes into the whole like being heroic kind of helps overcome like your personal fears and that sort of thing.
Right, because he's definitely got this fear of clowns, but that ends up playing into, removing himself from the situation so that he could then, go deal with it.
Yeah. And then we also have Zombozo's like 3 like minion, like circus minions. Because we have Thumbskull, who's the big, strong, dumb guy, who I find it funny that his hair actually looks like a nail.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have I forgot the name of the female character with like the long hair, very very Medusa like.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have I've forgot the name of the other guy, but I know like the guy with bad teeth has like acid breath, like like vomits out acid or whatever it is he does. All three of those guys definitely have like a believable circus vibe to them. I could definitely see some kind of circus act with something similar to them. I also like the fact that while everyone's in the actual circus tent itself, and Zombozo's like doing his act and entertaining everyone, his like 3 minions then go out and start robbing everyone.
Get the impression that this has been happening for a while.
Yeah, because later on, Zombozo does mention about like taking his show to the big leagues and like the bigger cities. So I feel like he's probably been doing this on smaller towns for a while. Because I know we also have like this machine that's behind him that like I'm assuming steals the souls from people. They don't directly say it's their souls. I think they say it's their happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But like stealing their souls is definitely the impression I get from it. And we also get after Gwen has been taken and Grandpa Max has basically been drained and he's like still kind of chuckling but like very depressed.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's kind of very
Yeah,
Jokerish.
very, yeah.
And even though Grandpa Max is in like a weakened state and he can't quite drive properly, I do like that he still is able to like give Ben some wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he says they need to scare the fear out of you. Maybe that's the direct line, or part of the line at least.
And I this may not have been intentional. It could just be a coincidence, but I kind of got kind of an echo from the first episode with, fighting fire with fire kind of a thing.
Yeah. Not really sure on that. I don't know how far ahead the writers actually planned with this. Obviously, they planned out the overarching story of the first season.
Sure.
And all the episodes that are relevant to it. But I think like the one-off episodes, I'm not sure if they really did like think ahead about any like connections to prior episodes or any connections to future episodes.
So, I mean, so it could just be coincidence. You end up inadvertently, revisiting a theme because it's kind of a natural thing.
Yeah. I also like the when Ben's like first going forward to where Zombozo is hiding, like the new circus tent that he's like starting to set up. We do get Ben turns into like Upgrade and it like possesses this like machine that fires basketball, well not basketball, baseballs. I'm not sure why that's circus exactly, but I know that when he's like fighting the circus freaks, I do find it funny that Thumb Skull is like, because of like how dumb he is, he's like not really like taking like it seriously when Ben's like fighting him.
Yeah.
So it's like Ben just fires like a few baseballs right at his head and it just knocks him out. And then obviously you get, and also the woman with the like super strong hair. She also like fires a couple he fires a couple balls at her and it's kind of weird. It kind of trips her up and then she spins around and all of her hair like wraps around her like real like nice and neatly.
Yeah.
That's definitely a cartoonish moment.
Right.
Don't really have much to say about like the circus freaks overall or like any of like their interactions.
Definitely felt like there was more they could explore here, and if there was ever a villain or group of villains that deserved to get a little bit more time in a later episode, I'd kind of be interested in these guys.
Yeah. And when Ben actually like enters the circus tent, this is where we get like a whole bunch of like psychological
Yeah.
like very like trippy, drug-induced images and stuff.
Yeah, like a dreamscape kind of situation.
Yeah. Like we had the mirrors, and then Zombozo's face like extends over all of the mirrors,
Right.
and then we see like a red and yellow version of Zombozo in the mirrors as well. And I think another one where Ben lands on like a giant spider's web, and then Zombozo as like this weird spider thing like walks along the web towards him, and I'm pretty sure the spider like with Zombozo's head, I'm pretty sure it actually gets gradually bigger as it moves closer to Ben. Because at the start of the shot, it looks relatively small, but then when it's like right next to Ben, it looks much larger.
Yeah, and I also kind of got a little bit of a Stephen King's It vibe here with the spider clown.
Yeah. You know, I never thought of that, but that now that you mention it, I do see that. And then when Ben's actually like when he starts fighting Zombozo, like turns into Ghost Freak, and I think there's actually one moment where he actually punches Zombozo in the nose, and we actually see like a mark of Ben's fist in his nose for a moment.
Mm.
And there's also is at this point that we then have another like a proper hint that Ghost Freak, like as an alien form, has his own like psychological effect on Ben. Because Ben like opens his what is it, like a some kind of like costume over him,
Mm-hmm.
because like he opens that and then you see a whole bunch of black and white tentacles coming out, and like that like terrifies Zombo. So I do like the fact that they don't actually show us what he actually sees, because that kind of lends itself to the like the scary factor of it. Because I know
Sure.
a lot of horror kind of does rely on you kind of coming up with something scary by on your own, rather than that rather than you directly being told what's scary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The
And then
whole
off
the
yeah,
whole Alfred Hitchcock concept, you can scare them more with what's implied than and let them, invent the fear rather than being overt about it.
yeah. And then we also get Ben like scares Zombozo, and then he like inflates like a balloon and blows up and into like confetti.
He says something like, "Now that was disturbing."
Yeah, because Ben like when he before he transforms back, he like recognizes that wasn't necessarily like fully him doing that,
Right.
because he's like, whoa, that creeped me out for a minute there,
Yeah.
and then he turns back. It's like like further implying that Ghost Freak as a transformation has somewhat of a mind of his own, or has somewhat of a psychological effect on
Right.
Ben.
Right.
And it's like not fully Ben in control every time he turns into Ghost Freak,
Yeah.
and that will be built on more in a episode during season 2. And I also like that right at the end we have Gwen kind of jumps out of nowhere with a clown mask on to try and scare Ben, and it doesn't work. And he's like, "You trying some new makeup, Gwen? That's a good look for you." He just
Yeah.
like just takes off the mask, just walks off, and fun,
Yeah.
which is both funny and also accurate to how like how 10-year-old kids would act,
Exactly.
specifically siblings. So, is there any more notes you'd like to add to that episode?
Nope. Pretty self-contained. It kind of makes me wish that, like I said, we'd be seeing something more from it later.
Yeah. Okay. Next episode, Lucky Girl.
Mm-hmm.
Is this one of the episodes that you didn't watch or didn't get to?
Let me double check here. I'm just looking at it really quick. Yeah, I didn't get this. This was so. I think the last one was the last one that I saw.
Okay, so the last laugh was the last one you
Yeah.
saw. So Lucky Girl, Small Problem, Side Effects, and Secrets. You basically have no idea.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so for Lucky Girl, this episode has a magician named Hex who has these charms, these different charms that control different elements. Where he like attacks this museum that contains an ancient spell book, and he basically plans to use this spell book to increase his like power. And Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max are at this museum when he attacks, and then Ben turns into one of his aliens, fights Hex, and it results in one of these charms coming off of Hex, and then Ben collects it as like a trophy, and basically and after he defeats Hex this foot at this beginning, he then starts like there's this news crew that interviews him about him like saving everyone, and he's like being uh, being like gloating about his victory, and like this is at this point when Gwen like starts like questioning him about like how he's, even though he didn't defeat Hex by himself, he's like hogging all the glory and everything.
Right.
So she like so Ben then decides to give her the little charm that he collected from Hex after beating him, and we then later learn that this charm is actually a magic charm that specifically controls like luck, like good luck and bad luck,
Mm-hmm.
and whoever's holding the charm, when it glows, basically all like good luck happens to the person holding the charm. So basically, and then Gwen decides to like become her own hero with this, and like call herself Lucky Girl. Now, obviously, I am kind of skipping over a whole bunch of
Sure.
stuff that's happening. There's actually one thing I noticed in like this one scene when Gwen like starts to learn how the charm actually works. There's like these couple of punks who have stolen some woman's purse, and like she stops them. I did notice that one of the punks at the front, or who's like leading the group, is designed and looks very similar to Kevin. I don't know if that was like an intentional thing or if that's just them just reusing a design.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. This is also an episode where I don't really have much when it comes to the notes.
It sounds like it's a great opportunity, though, to explore Gwen as a character a little bit.
Yeah, she definitely is. She isn't completely the focus character, but she is definitely more in focus in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nearer the end of the episode when they're fighting in like this graveyard area, and Hex like uses his like a magic staff that he has to bring these like statues of gargoyles to life, and Ben has transformed into forearms and starts fighting them. And there's like the part of this whole fight that kind of reminds me of the final part of the first Hellboy movie, because you have a big strong red guy using a stone sword in like a graveyard type area, fighting, or in Hellboy's case it's kind of an eldritch horror tentacle monster thing, and in this case it's stone gargoyles. I don't know if that similarity was intentional, but it's definitely something I noticed.
Well, the thing I would have thought of is I wonder if there's any, in intentional or unintentional correlation to the Gargoyles cartoon.
Oh yeah, I never thought of that.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I believe the Hellboy movie came out like a year or so before this show started.
Mm-hmm.
So this is definitely an instance where the show would have, if this is influenced by Hellboy, then the show would have got an influence from that rather than the Hellboy movie influencing from
Right.
this.
Exactly.
And then we also have another note that I made right at the very end, after they defeat Hex and they take this like sash that Hex had that has all the charms on it.
Mm-hmm.
For a moment, Gwen considers using, like, taking all of them and keeping them, but she then decides instead not to and to destroy them instead. And I'm just thinking, it might have actually been better if she'd have kept all of the charms and
Mm-hmm.
like trained with them or something like that. But I do get the message they were trying to convey.
Yeah, and if she did destroy them, they're destroyed. They're not going to get into somebody else's hands, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to not use them, and then later on they get into somebody else's hands and become a problem again or something.
Yeah. That's about all I have for notes on this episode. And now we'll move on to the next episode, A Small Problem. Now this one, we have Ben and Gwen. They're at like a water park, and basically immediately we have an instance where Ben isn't able to actually go on the ride because he's too short, while Gwen is like slightly taller than him, so she can go on the ride.
Right.
And he's like frustrated by this, so he hides and then messes with the Omnitrix and tries transforming into one of the aliens, because obviously as one of the alien forms he would be a bit tall enough to actually go on the ride. But then what happens is the Omnitrix doesn't properly work, like the dial doesn't actually go down. So Ben like smacks the Omnitrix against a wall, and then this causes like a more unique transformation effect where we actually get sees like some green lightning and everything. And then he turns into grey matter. And what happens is, as he's turned into grey matter, he's then stuck as grey matter for a lot longer than normal.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the second episode where the show itself kind of messes with the formula of the show a bit. So we have Ben as grey matter as an alien for longer than normal. And while he's at a water park, some guy who's obsessed with proving the existence of aliens notices Ben as grey matter and like grabs him, and then goes home with him, and like basically traps him in a bottle, and then like makes contact with like this secret organization when it's related to aliens, because I believe the guy's name is Howard something. But yeah, he basically wants to prove the existence of aliens so that he can then become famous. And when he like discovers Ben as grey matter, he doesn't know that it's actually a 10-year-old boy transformed into an alien. He just thinks it's just some random alien. And he when he actually gets back to his home, there's actually something I noticed where his home's actually surprisingly like filled with surprising amounts of advanced technology, despite the fact that it's just some random suburban home. And he makes contact with a secret organization. Well, this organization is later identified as the Forever Knights, but in this episode they are never identified as that. This is another example of the of like Ben Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max using information or having information later on that we never see them learn. Although this episode does show that Grandpa Max does once again know more than he's telling, because he tells Gwen when she asks who they are. Grandpa Max does actually give somewhat of an in-depth explanation as to who the Forever Knights are. So it's like another example of him knowing more. And Gwen even looks at him funny, and he just quickly says, "Oh, when you've been around as long as I have, you pick up a few things."
Right.
And it's like another example of Grandpa Max knowing more and then quickly covering up that he knows more by saying something else. And we also see in this episode, Grandpa Max has this useful trick where while him and Gwen are trying to find the guy that took Ben, they end up stopping at the wrong house, and Grandpa Max kicks the door down, assuming it's the right house, and it's actually just some old woman and a dog, and the dog jumps out onto Grandpa Max, and he quickly puts his hands on the dog's head, and it just immediately puts the dog to sleep. And
yeah,
this
that's weird.
Yeah, and Grandpa Max, he doesn't really say anything about it. He just sort of glances over the fact that he knows how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Grey Matter, or Ben as Grey Matter, is then taken by the Forever Knights to their actual castle that they are based in, because the guy who took Ben, he made contact with the Forever Knights. We also do get a little bit of history with them, because they do actually say to him, is we're tired of your blurry pictures and suggestions of alien life. It's our resources can only be stretched so far. It's we get it's a hint that they've or that he's gone to them before about this sort of thing. Obviously the last few times he's obviously not been as accurate. And we also get when Ben is actually taken to the Forever Knights, he then assumes that they're gonna then go to the news stations and tell the world about this, and they're oh no, we're not going to tell anyone about this, we prefer to keep our discoveries to ourselves. He's I do find it funny that he never thought that anyone would do that. I do find it funny that he immediately assumed that an organization of knights would be who have shown to be kind of secretive before, because when they arrive at his home, they're all wearing trench coats and hats, and they're hiding their identity and everything. Yeah, so then they take Ben to this room because they're preparing to dissect him, and then Howie kind of has a change of heart, because he didn't necessarily want little grey matter alien to be hurt. He just wanted some recognition. So he goes in, disguises himself as one of the scientists, knocks them out, and saves Ben. And then as they're running away from the other Forever Knights, we do see that Grandpa Max and Gwen do sneak into the castle, and they run into Ben, and they find this hidden room with a bunch of advanced alien tech in it, and Grey Matter tells them to grab a few bits of the other tech so he can use it to plug into one of the other larger devices that's in there. He rigs it to blow, and it takes out it kind of blows up, takes out the whole castle. Obviously before the Forever Knights evacuate, and they leave everyone. They leave Grandpa Max, Gwen, and then the guy who initially grabbed Ben. Well, aside from me recounting what happened in the episode, I don't really have much that I've written or that I noticed about this episode.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of lore there that I might have to look into.
Yeah. And then the next episode, this is also another instance of me not really having much in the way of notes on this one, like stuff that I noticed. Because I mean, these last two episodes were definitely ones where it's like I didn't really have much that I noticed. Because when this next episode, side effects. I mean, this one does open with with another example of Ben using his powers in a unique way, because he's turned into Upgrade and he's like controlling a motorbike, and he's chasing after some guys who have stolen a car and have like some money in the trunk. And Ben uses his powers Upgrade to like create some kind of blade out of the side of the motorbike, kind of like an energy construct, like a Green Lantern, something like that. And after he stops them, he then sees an ice cream truck, decides to open it and like go inside it and start eating some of the ice cream. And then when Grandpa Max and Gwen find him there, he's actually been there long enough that he's ended up with a cold. And this cold then starts affecting his aliens in different ways. Like each alien has a unique effect that the cold has on them. Like for Wildmat, his sense of smell is clogged, so he can't see anything. So he starts bashing, and so he starts like running around randomly and bashing into stuff because he can't see where he's going. And like like his alien forearms, his armpits are turned into like what is it like really smelly and stinky like hives or something.
Yeah.
And then probably my favorite effect that the cold has on his aliens, and probably the one that most fans would point to as probably the reason to watch this episode, is when he turns into Heat Blast. Instead of being fire, he's firing ice, and like the cold has kind of turned him into like
literally
frost.
cold. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. But this episode has another one-off villain, where instead of where this guy is like a bug guy. He basically has this like ability to control all various types of bugs and insects. There's no explanation given as to how or why he has this ability. He just has it. Because the overall plot of the episode is basically he lives in like this condemned building that's set to be demolished, but he like is very attached to this building and doesn't want it to be torn down. And he starts attacking people who are trying to starts attacking people who are trying to get the building destroyed. And he goes right to like this councilwoman who signed off on like the building being demolished. And there's like a later part where he I think the bug guy's name is Clancy, I believe. Yeah, he basically after kidnapping the councilwoman who signed off on his home being demolished, and then Ben like goes there and rescues her, and in the process accidentally destroys the building. Clancy then like threatens to basically exterminate the whole city, and he goes to this power plant to like overload it and cause it to melt down. And while Ben's there, he this is where he turns into Heat Blast, and he has like the ice. He's like become like Well, I think they jokingly call him an ice cream maker or an ice cream dispenser or something like that. But yeah, while he's there, he then like learns that the cold learns how the cold has affected Heat Blast, and he uses that power to then freeze the reactor itself to cool it down to stop it from melting down, and then he also freezes Clancy solid. Although for some reason they just sort of leave him there and don't actually do anything with him, which then of course results in him coming back later. In fact, right at the very end of the episode, he then comes back to to attack them for for stopping him and freezing him solid. And then because to protect himself from the nuclear meltdown, like he had like all of his bugs, or I think cockroaches, like cover his entire body in some a bug suit basically. This episode does kind of go over like different things that insects can do. Like they mentioned, the ants can lift multiple times their weight, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And they use a this like cold remedy that Grandpa Max has that they introduced earlier in the episode. They use that to kind of attract all the bugs away from Clancy, and then they throw it out the window of the RV, so they all then follow it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Clancy it's just him, they then like knock him out and then call the police, which I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't do like when they initially defeated him.
Right.
I mean, that's what I would have done after freezing Clancy. I would then call the police or something. Yeah, but that's a minor thing. Oh yeah, this episode is also the second instance of Ben turning into forearms to try and scare Gwen.
Huh.
Yeah, because he turns into forearms and pretends to be like a giant bug.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although Ben only does that at least twice, like once in the episode The Kraken, and then
right.
a second time here. And now I shall move on to the final episode, being Secrets. Would you like me to reveal everything, or would you like me to keep it kind of vague so that you at least can learn stuff?
That's fine. Keep it vague because I do plan to watch it now.
Okay. So this episode, because at the start in the first episode when Vilgax is chasing the smaller ship that's carrying the Omnitrix, and it like fires a blast at his ship and damages him, and he's kind of in this like tank, in this like healing tank for most of the season. Yeah. In this episode, Vilgax in this tank it opens, and we finally get Vilgax like back to full strength, and he's been like enhanced with like a new cybernetic body. Although we don't actually see what he looks like at the very beginning, he's kept in shadow for most of this episode, or at least early on. How he looks is kept in shadow. And some of the things I've noted that in this episode actually has some pretty dynamic and exaggerated poses and like some cartoony like expressions, which definitely works for this overall style. And also when Vilgax himself decides, like, now that after like being disappointed and different attempts to get the Omnitrix have failed, he's decided this time he's going to go after the Omnitrix himself. So he decides to first locate where the Omnitrix is, and then when he actually first he uses because he's been watching Ben as it, or he's only seen Ben as these different aliens, and he's also had this assumption over the course of the season that the person wielding the Omnitrix is very smart and very dangerous, and he has no idea of Ben's actual personality.
Right.
He has no idea that the person who's had the Omnitrix this whole time has been an immature and an immature 10-year-old,
and
basically.
impulsive.
Yeah. So he's had no idea. He's over the course of the season, he's had a specific idea of who has the Omnitrix based on what's happened to everyone he's sent after Ben. So it's so Vilgax kind of has a preconceived notion of who he thinks it is that has the Omnitrix,
which is kind of telling, right? Because if this impulsive 10-year-old can, do as much damage to this guy's plans, the way he is now, imagine where he'll be years down the line with more experience.
Yeah. In this episode, when Vilgax, when he actually, or at the very start, Ben wakes up from a nightmare. We never see what the nightmare is, but it's kind of inferred that what it is another vision of Vilgax talking to Ben or saying something to Ben directly.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I'm coming for you now." And after Ben tells Grandpa Max this, Grandpa Max is then immediately like, "Okay, let's go, let's get out of here."
Yeah,
because Grandpa Max does have some history with Vilgax, and he doesn't know who he is. But obviously, with the whole season, he kind of never directly said anything. He kind of did his best to kind of keep this all hidden. Yeah, and when Vilgax does finally catch up to Ben, he first he sends all his drones to start attacking a city because he knows, because Ben's had been acting very heroic so far. Vilgax kind of realizes if he starts attacking a city, this is going to get Ben's attention. It's kind of going to attract him out to move to where he is. And there's even this moment where when Ben notices the city's the smoke coming from the city, and he's like, "Whoa, what's going on over there?" And then Grandpa Max is immediately recognizes what's going on. He's it's maybe the local authorities have it under control. And basically then Ben immediately decides to transform into Heat Blast and then fly over there and start fighting the drones and tries to help people. Although there is one thing I noticed, that a couple of shots from these later episodes are actually used in the actual opening of the show itself. One shot of Heat Blasting in this episode where he's flying off into the sky. That shot is used in the opening. And an episode from Lucky Girl with 4 arms using a stone sword. That shot is also used in the opening. I'm not really sure what else I can really say about this episode, because a lot.
Right. Yeah, I think ultimately I really have to watch this episode before going any further.
Because there's there's a couple of things about this episode that I really like, but I can't really talk about without you having seen the episode first.
Fair enough. So let me ask a question that has been kind of on my mind since starting to watch this. Is this, I mean, obviously this is like a Cartoon Network original type show, influenced by anime? Because it's definitely not like just so many other uh, animes that were, ported over and redubbed. This is something completely unique, but it does have that anime feel to it.
I can definitely see the anime influences on this, like the speed lines and everything, and
Yeah,
a couple of the art style itself's not quite anime-ish,
true.
or not, or like the traditional way that we'd like see the anime style.
Yeah,
I know that the sequel show Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, both of those two have a more direct anime influenced style.
okay. So I am
Yeah,
picking up on something that clearly is there.
yeah. This show has more of a light influence from anime rather than being like directly like fully taking all of the like various inspirations. I mean, the show definitely has kind of a mix of anime and then like superhero comics, like
Yeah,
in a way.
yeah,
Because I mean, this show basically has like the show is basically like a superhero team, but instead of it being like multiple team members, it's one character who becomes the different team members. I
yeah.
suppose how you could think of it.
Exactly. Good point. Good point. Or like I was saying before, Billy Batson becoming Captain Marvel, but also becoming a bunch of other, characters with the
Yeah.
different skill set.
Oh yeah, because this is also a 10-year-old kid with superpowers
Yeah.
or trans and well, I mean the alien forms they're not necessarily adult forms because one of the one of the ways the Omnitrix works is it turns the whoever has it turns them into basically the peak physical perfection of that alien species and also the relative age of that alien species to whoever has the Omnitrix. So Ben's a 10-year-old, so each of the aliens are the 10-year-old version of that alien species.
Interesting. Yeah.
And also
Because
the peak physical condition of that species.
so, yeah, we're kind of thinking that perhaps, these are adult characters, but that's not the case. They're actually juveniles too.
Yeah. There are a couple of other like ways the Omnitrix works, like what was it? There was also a thing where the Omnitrix is technically supposed to basically insert the information of how each species works into Ben's brain. But
Mhm.
obviously, in this show, it's not working properly, so it doesn't do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because the Omnitrix that Ben uses in this show is actually the prototype. It's not until a lot later on that he then gets like the official finished Omnitrix.
Oh, I see. I see.
So yeah, the fact that it's the prototype might explain away a couple other of the weird problems and things that the Omnitrix does.
Cool. Cool. Wow. Well, that's I mean, I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. It really is a pretty good show, and I am
It's also
interested to
very memorable
Oh yeah.
because this is one of those shows where I can like start watching the show and at first I'll be like, oh, I don't remember what happens here, but then as soon as I start watching, then it will all come back and I'll go, oh yeah, I remember how this happens now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it'll be a case where like later seasons I'll be like, does what episode is this one? And then when I get to that, then I'll be like, then I'll immediately
Yep.
remember what happens in that episode. Yeah, this show is surprisingly memorable. Although that might also go into the fact that I've watched this show all the way through at least 3 or 4 times now.
Ah,
So I probably do have somewhat of an advantage in that case.
fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, great. Yeah, that was I super appreciate you introducing me to this. This was definitely a good one.
Yeah, We can even talk about season 2. Obviously, next week we'll do talk more about Transformers.
Sure. Maybe you'll be able to reveal to me where Gladiator of Kahan comes from.
Kahan.
Kahan. Yeah.
Yes, that'll be one of the things that I'll go more into.
All righty.
Yep.
Well, that's great. Anything else?
No, yeah, that's about it.
All right. Well, let's thank Samuel Proctor for sticking around with us for as long as he's been here.
Yep. Thank you for being here, Samuel Proctor. I really appreciate you being here.
I see he was drawing some correlations too as we were going along. I caught that. Good on you. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys.
Yep. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And next week shall be part 2 to our Transformers talk. Same time as this.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
I was about to say 3 o'clock, but that's not the time over in America when this starts.
Yeah, it's it's 8 o'clock central for me, so that'd be 9 o'clock a.m. over on the East Coast. Don't know where everyone's at, but that'll give you a way to calculate it.
Yep. Oh, hi, Nanette.
Oh, Netter jumped in to say hi. But anyway, yeah, thanks everyone.
Yep.
Catch you next week.
Goodbye.